having been in Silicon Valley for 20 years now, in 2005, Web 2.0 was hot, and then 2008-7 rolled around, and mobile became hot, and then hardware became hot, and then big data became hot, and then AR/VR was hot, and then self-driving was hot, and then crypto was hot, and now AI is hot, and then there will be robotics will be hot. Every 3 years, there is something new. Way you sort of have to say, okay, what excites me, where do I want to be? When you're 25, you can't imagine what it is to work at a place for 10 years, but then you over time realize that there is a value in compounding.
So I met you through Twitter, as
Correct.
one does in
Yep.
Silicon Valley last fall.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind enough to come and help give an entrepreneur class, learnings from your journey building companies, right? And that is when I discovered the master plan for Matic,
Yeah.
which wasn't building vacuums.
Correct.
And we'll come back to that.
Sure.
And it's great to see everything live in action, and we'll get to tour the facility after this. So I'm looking
Yes.
forward to that. Tell me more about your journey, your story, how you got to the US, you're an immigrant.
Yeah.
What that journey was like.
So I moved here when I was 15 during high school, so 11th grade, and I didn't actually speak any English at all. So I went to Gujarati medium school, which is my native tongue. And then I remember on the 5th day after moving to the United States, this is 94, I went to high school and pretty much couldn't understand anything that was going on. But luckily for me, high school education in India was slightly ahead than US education. So I ended up, all I had to do was just translate. And everything that was being taught, I already knew. So that helped me transition a little bit better and get, honestly, A grades, even though I didn't know languages. But then it was a bunch of a comedy of errors. So one comedy of errors is that I moved here in the middle of 11th grade. Then in November or December of the senior year, my guidance counselor goes, "Hey, have you taken SATs?" And I'm like, "What's SATs?" So then I took SATs and got into college, and it just there. So there were a lot of little things like that I just had to figure out. So that's how it started. Luckily for me, I ended up getting, and then my joke generally is that any Indian or maybe Pakistani or sometimes Asian who grows up in USA is a pre-med at some point. They're all brainwashed to be a doctor, and so was I.
Yeah.
So I was 3 years of biochemistry major in undergrad before, and I even took MCATs before realizing that I have zero desire to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, this is 98, 99 when human genome was just coded.
Yes.
At NIH. And bioinformatics as a field was emerging. So I took 3 years of biochemistry course and 1 year of computer science and called it bioinformatics and graduated on time. But then I had zero desire to do any bioinformatics whatsoever, so I just moved into software engineering and programming. So that's how I got started in this place. And then if you graduated anywhere from 95 to 99, if you didn't think about startups similar to, I guess, time these days, you were just doing something different. Like I was in Washington, D.C. area. I went to undergrad in University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So I graduated. And even in Washington in 99, there were, I don't know, I want to say 200 plus startups. It was just really, really crazy. They were all telecom startups, but startups were just all over the place. So there was a startup fever. So I ended up actually going to startup right after undergrad.
In the middle of a dot-com boom, right?
Right at the peak, actually.
Yeah, you were at the peak.
Yes, right at the peak, 98, we graduated. Went to this startup. That startup raised $30 million, I remember. We spent all of it in 11 months.
In D.C.?
Yes, in Washington, D.C. And then went belly up. So it was like a spectacular failure. And I still remember, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this firm, MicroStrategy.
Yes.
Which is buying shitload of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So MicroStrategy was one of the first companies to get caught in accounting scandal in March 2000, exact 2000, yeah. So this is literally out of it. And that was the first stock to tank. It was one of those stock that went public at $30, was at $300, and then it was one of the first stock to tank, and that sort of started the crashing of the bubble, at least in Northern Virginia, DC area. So we used to refer to that as micro tragedy. And that resulted in MCI. Then soon after MCI WorldCom.
You're old enough to remember.
All this stuff, like MCI WorldCom went belly up, and like the whole thing just sort of exploded. And I was at a startup, so startup folded. We actually knew it was going to happen.
Can you share more about the startup?
Yeah, so
and what did you work on? How did you get that job?
Yeah, good question. I think through a friend, if I remember correctly. But so undergrad, I'm moving to bioinformatics. Then I have a roommate and taking computer science courses. And I have a roommate who was a computer science major, and he's one day getting ready and going. And I'm like, where are you going? And he's like, oh, this company called Booz Allen Hamilton is coming to our office. So I was like, okay, what do they do? He's like, wait, you don't know them? I'm like, no, I have no idea. So he's like, oh, it's a top 5 consulting firm. You should come. So I joined him, and then somehow I ended up getting on the closed list for the interviews and get a job. And then I get to Booz Allen Hamilton. It's a big company. First day I go in, I'm a software engineer. Back then there was no laptop, so they give you a desktop. And then first day I get this Code Fusion book, which is the language they were using, and I said, learn it. So I started learning that language and got in close with one of my office mates, and he ended up joining the startup. So he left 2 months later, ended up joining the startup. So then he kind of recruited me that, hey, why don't you come over as well? And I was excited about startups to begin with at that point in time. There was just something fun about it. So I ended up joining them, and it was
what
really...
got you interested in startups? You do mention there was this trend where people were starting companies even in DC area, but
I think it's
who
just
were your friends at the
I think it was just the background or the genes, I guess, Gujaratis in
yeah,
India.
so for anyone who doesn't know, Gujaratis in India are known for being entrepreneurial.
That's correct.
So not necessarily startups, but they're known for being entrepreneurial.
Correct.
Whether that's owning restaurants or small
or lifestyle businesses.
Or lifestyle businesses.
Yes, exactly. Right? So my dad is a businessman as well.
That.
My dad is a businessman. Everyone in the family around it is a business person, one way or the other. I don't think anyone has held a job for longer than few years, and that might be the early part of it. So my dad was always that, hey, you shouldn't, my dad always gave this advice that don't worry about climbing the ladder, build your own ladder, so to speak. So in that sense, I always knew that I wanted to do a startup. There was just an excitement about it, and I had always had ideas.
It was just about the opportunity.
So when we got this opportunity to join the startup, I just jumped at it right away. And
was there any thought process that went into it? What they're working on? And
what they were working was I was still young, naive, so I didn't really know how to pick the startup. I don't think anyone does at that point in time, or maybe
that develops over time.
But we had a stellar executive team. So there is a company called Web Methods. I believe they are still around. So back then, XML was a really popular technology, which was the markup language on top of HTML. And these guys Web Methods was a company that was doing really, really well, and they were building essentially XML-based ERP system glue. So if you have all these mainframes and old software, then transferring the data using XML was the easy one. So they were huge success. And I think on the East Coast, there is a venture capital / legal firm called FBR, Friedman's, Billings and Ramsey. So they took Web Methods public, made a lot of money. And then in an enterprise software, your revenue from product has to be higher than your revenue from consulting.
Right.
So as Web Method was getting deployed, all these companies like Anderson Consulting or Accenture now or PwCs were making a lot of money. So this VC firm thought, why don't we just start another company, which is sort of a consulting firm for Web Methods, and we'll take it public. So they hired a former Capgemini America CEO to be our COO, and then KPMG Consulting CFO to be our CFO, and then serial entrepreneur who had done 2-3 companies. So it was this like stellar team. And I thought, okay, if these guys are all coming in, maybe there is a really, really good chance. But turns out, selling without having PwC or Accenture as a brand name is much harder. But we grew to 150 people team in 5 countries worldwide without ever generating any sort of revenue or anything like that. And it was funny. It was incredible that we thought we would go public, and we were so close to it. And obviously, .com bubble fell apart, and then your revenue and things like that mattered, and we were never able to raise Series B. But I was on the software engineering side, so I still remember we were the last people to get laid off. It was like a 3rd or 4th round. And we knew it was coming, so I had already found a job by the time layoff happened. And when the layoff happened, CEO was gone, CFO was gone, we only had legal counsel, and he's like, we don't have any money left to pay you, so take whatever you want from the office as a severance. So some people walked out with like 5 laptops, some people took like Sega Dreamcast, some people took furniture. This is honestly true story.
This is an incredible story.
Yeah. So that sort of popped the cherry in terms of, hey, and I think it was early in a career where I didn't really care about failure. In fact, it made me question a lot more on what went wrong, how to think about it. what became successful. And we had started as a consulting for web methods, but eventually turned into hosted platform company. And hosted platform is a very, very first term to what is referred to today as SaaS, or software as a service.
I see.
There were 600 plus companies, so that's what Loud Cloud was, that Mark Anderson and Ben Edwards started. Exactly. So there were 600 plus hosted platform startup, and that's what we were doing. So that sort of was a really key, because in between, when I was done with this startup, I was given an advice that, hey, you should join a big company, build a career. So I ended up at Accenture with one of the VPs who was there.
Yeah.
And quickly realized that both
never do anything meaningful in life.
Yeah, so 2 years. It took about 2 years, but 2 years was enough to realize that, okay, consulting is definitely not something I want to do. Yeah. Back then, I don't know what's it's today, but back then at some point I realized that 27% of the projects that actually consulting Accenture did back then got deployed. Right. So you really have a 1 in 3 chance to do meaningful work. And I just didn't think anything I was working on was going to get deployed. So consulting wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. I didn't really see myself as a partner. So I ended up leaving and wanted to get back to startups. This is 2002, but startups weren't in vogue yet. So I was like, okay, maybe I should get a business.
Back then, from what I hear.
Well, I think in Bay Area it was already starting to come back, but in DC it certainly wasn't the case. So Silicon Valley was sort of starting to pick up the pieces and growing again, because there were some really good companies that got founded around that time, including obviously some of the social networks. So there was a trend of Web 2.0 and social network emerging. But I was in DC and no one really, in DC and East Coast, nothing was happening.
So there's some threads there that I want to pull on.
Yeah.
One is around proximity. You mentioned you were in Gujarat.
Yes.
Where most people are entrepreneurial. You were born to an entrepreneurial family. Your dad runs a business. How much throughout your career, what have you observed about how much of an impact proximity has on people? Moving from DC to Silicon Valley, for example, how did that change your mindset about things? Or how have you seen that impact your employees over time? Over time?
That's a great question. Actually, I feel like because I had moved when I was 15 and gone through all these changes, any sort of change didn't bother me. A lot of people dislike change, and change or risk or what could go wrong. I mean, I really...
For you, the biggest change was moving to the US as a high school student on your own without your family.
Exactly. So there was nothing to lose kind of mentality. And I feel like I found more people like me who weren't afraid to take risk in Silicon Valley than even in East Coast. So in East Coast, yes, there were companies that are starting. The mindset is still relatively, and to be fair, I haven't been in East Coast.
Slightly more conservative.
It's been 20 years since I moved to Bay Area, so I don't know how East Coast is like, but I still think until I moved to Bay Area, I thought I knew technology, and I thought I knew how to do startups, and I thought I knew how to take risk. And then I moved to Bay Area, and there were people who were, I felt like, living 5 or 10 years ahead of me.
Right.
And that realization is still mind-boggling. And I would assume that's still the case, that Silicon Valley is a few years ahead in terms of just embracing technology.
What do you think that is a function of?
I think that's a function of a couple of things, which is it does attract very type A, ambitious self-selection of people who move from all over the world, not just United States, but all over the world who just want to build. There is just this attraction of that the mentality, and that mentality I think is very hard to reproduce. I remember, so I went to.
Contagious.
It's contagious.
It can die just as fast if you're in the wrong place.
And what cinched my move, so I didn't really move to Silicon Valley right away. I moved to Chicago to go to business school at University of Chicago Booth, and one of the alumni from Booth was, I believe, 11th or 12th employee. Her name was Catherine Gould. She passed away, unfortunately, but she was 11th or 12th employee at Oracle. And then she eventually started Foundation Capital, so one of the original partners at Foundation Capital. Okay. And she came to give a talk, and I remember her, her saying that I moved to Silicon Valley because I thought that area itself was a rocket ship, and if I just get on that rocket ship, I'm gonna grow. So you should go figure out what is the next Silicon Valley. And I sort of came to conclusion that the next Silicon Valley is still just the Silicon Valley. So I need to move there. But it was still a very contrarian decision, relatively speaking, because we had about 725 people class, and I think only about 3 of us moved to Bay Area. Almost everyone ended up going to New York or Chicago. Or different
New York
places.
Was still the obvious choice. It was
Yes. And finance was back, consulting was back.
Finance and consulting.
Yes.
that's a good segue into the next question. What goes into the decision making when you're at a consulting firm? You're still in your mid-20s,
Yes.
right? It is still one of the most in-demand jobs in the market, right? As
Yes.
someone who's
And
moved
prestigious.
here, a prestigious job,
Sure.
right? You have all the signaling, you have all the accolade. You don't really have your parents' house to go back to sleep
Sure.
in, right?
Sure.
You still have to financially take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Despite that, like, what was your thought process? And okay, like, it's fine. Let me take another risk.
No, it was not. Well, so sometimes you don't know what is the right answer,
Right.
but you definitely know what is the wrong answer. It's like a multiple choice, right?
Interesting, yeah.
So in my case, as I was at Accenture, you're on the road and you say, okay, if I stay here, I'm going to be a partner one day.
Right.
And the question I asked myself is, do I want that job? Does that job excite me? Like,
Yeah.
this is the path I'm on. This is the destination I will be headed and will end up at. Is that the destination I want to be? And the answer was hell no.
I
This is
like
not
that
the-
framing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that I wanted to I knew that there was some inkling that I want to do startup, but I didn't know that I want to switch to the technology side or Silicon Valley. But it was more that Accenture absolutely is not a right answer.
Yeah.
That's not where I want to slow. I don't know where to go yet, so let me go to business school and maybe I'll figure something out. But once I was at business school, this idea that I want to do a startup became very important to me, and then it was obvious that somehow, some way, I need to get to Silicon Valley.
I really like that framing where you look at your current opportunity or your current state, and even if you don't have all the answers, even if you don't know where you want to go, you look at where this is the place you want to be long term.
Yeah, exactly. And then the quick thing is, once you know what is the wrong answer, move on from there. So you may not know what is the right answer.
Okay,
but
it
you
at least
know.
gives you clarity about what's the wrong answer.
That's correct. Yeah, because you have to shut some doors in order to open few ones.
And you have to carry that sort of mental model into startups as well, right? Because there's so much uncertainty.
There is so much uncertainty. There is so much opportunity. There is, having been in Silicon Valley for 20 years now, in 2005 when I moved, Web 2.0 was hot. Everyone was doing blogs and wikis and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And then 2008-7 rolled around and mobile became hot, and then hardware became hot, and then big data became hot, and then AR, VR was hot, and then self-driving was hot, and then crypto was hot, and now AI is hot, and then there will be robotics will be hot. So, and the reason I bring this up is every 3 years there is something new, a wave, and you sort of have to say, okay, what excites me? Where do I want to be? And the hardest part for me was as well, so I don't blame any young people, is to, when you're 25, you can't imagine what it is to work at a place for 10 years. That's more than 40% of your life.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. So this is honestly the longest job I've held. So I can't blame anyone else for that. So this is 7 years. Prior to that, my record was 3 years. So there was impatience, but then you over time realize that there is a value in compounding.
Yeah.
And compounding happens even at a job level, even at a product level.
In the right places.
In right places.
And depends on what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was really the biggest learning lessons, that as I kept going from one place to another place to another place, it was more that, okay, I want to finish things. Mm-hmm. And two, at least for Matic, it was obvious that whatever we do next, I want to do it for the rest of my career, in the sense that this is the last job I want to have. So that's where coming up with the master plan that you alluded became very obvious, that, okay, how do we pick an idea or domain where we can spend 20, 30 years, keep solving problems and not get bored?
Yeah.
And that was really how we thought about it.
How do you, as you look back, what has compounded in your life through your career choices? Looking back,
yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't obvious at the time, right?
So one is just
things that are translating now that you wouldn't have expected.
Yeah, so one is just understanding of how startups work and what it takes to build and what it takes to execute. I think even though I wouldn't say that you necessarily need a business school education to go to a startup. Yeah, I don't think it's needed. But it helps, but I don't think it's needed. Would
you do it again?
Yeah, there are elements. Like, it's very hard to separate out things that are different. I think back then I didn't know any better. So if you kind of put me in that mindset, I would do it again. Did I really need it to make it happen? No. Maybe I should go and would have started company earlier.
What's the most valuable thing you got out of it?
Yeah, I was gonna get that. So two of my favorite classes was actually, one is just simple microeconomics, which I had never taken, and microeconomics is everywhere in your life, and if you just understand the fundamentals, is great. And I genuinely believe that anything from competitive strategy to any KPIs to anything you hear is just a fancy words to describe microeconomics. So that foundation knowledge was great. And then the second most best class I took, and was this professor used to run what is referred to as startup lab, and she would tell us that come up with an idea and pretend as if you're running the company, and tell me what happened. And each week was a quarter in a company.
Right.
And then whatever you write as a report on what happened has to be based on real world research.
Right.
So you can't come out and just say, oh, I did this. Like, I remember one of the guys like, oh, I hired VP of engineering from Amazon. And then she goes like, oh my God, you must be the greatest reseller in the world. Like, you must be greatest recruiter in the world. Why would, this big shot Amazon VP leave Amazon job and join your startup?
Yeah.
What salary did you offer? What was the stock options?
Yeah.
Did you get approval from your VCs and investors to hire him? And she would just go into this very tactical execution-oriented question. Yeah. And then you're like, oh shit, like, what you think is like,
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, so you clearly made a good pitch. Great. Make that pitch to me. Tell me how do you convince me? Like, assume I'm a VP of engineering. Convince me that you to
And
join
then
the
you
company.
realize you hadn't gone 5 layers deep.
Exactly. So she would always say that, give me $1 billion idea and I'll give you $1, because rest of the value is worth in execution.
Yeah.
So she really sort of instilled this idea that it's really about execution.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the journey. And then I moved to Bay Area, and my first job was at Salesforce.com, which was still 300 people, relatively tiny company. It was the SaaS. So part of the curiosity was that, hey, hosted platform company that I was at failed.
Did you hold on to the stock?
No, I didn't hold on to the stock. I should have, but no, I sold it as I was doing my other startups. But Salesforce.com was the first job. I was there for a year and a half. Then I realized that I still want to be in a smaller company. And learning was that just like anything you practice in your life and get better the second and third time around, startups are also something you get better in with practice.
Yeah.
There are people like maybe Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates who gets it right
Those
the
are
first
anomalies.
time. Exactly.
Yeah.
That they're more like, you're more likely to learn again and again and again and go from there. And probability of success is obviously very low.
So we've seen this. I'll just add to that. I think Inc. published a report that the average age of unicorn founders is 42 or 43 years of age.
Correct.
And we looked at our own portfolio. The average age of founders we fund is between 36 to 38.
Yes.
So this is always an anomaly. The 20-year-old, the 19-year-old founder we celebrate is usually an anomaly.
And back then there was no Y Combinator, right?
Yeah.
So most of the venture capitalists still tend to fund an even older generation, I would say. Yeah. So traditional path, at least the path
People
there
with
was
backgrounds
that.
and experiences.
Exactly. And at that time the path was, you still joined a startup, you learn as an early employee, you learn, and then you
I think
sort
that
of
is still the best path.
So
To build
agreed.
at least hard
skills,
startups.
yes.
Yeah.
Because you get to do it with a slightly less risk, where initially at least you don't know what you don't know. There was no YC. Now with accelerators and YC, there is a lot more information out there. But back then, this is 2005, so I don't think how to build a company or how to build a startup was as democratized as it is today.
Yeah.
Going to a startup, learning from it, and then just going through that process again has helped. So I think everything compounds, all your lessons compound.
What was your first company and why did you decide to do it? Flutter was the first company,
Correct.
I believe, right?
Yes. So I was very lucky that after leaving Salesforce.com, which was CRM, one of the realization at Salesforce.com was that I really do not enjoy selling product to other businesses, that I want to be on a consumer side of things. So at that point in time, I left and ended up joining this startup called Like.com, Like. That was the first computer vision startup in Silicon Valley.
Like.com.
Like.com. This was 2005. We were doing facial recognition.
You started doing computer vision 20 years before everyone else got
exactly. It was the first computer vision startup. No one really knew anything about it. I think we had like
compounding exhibit A.
Yeah.
All Matic robots use computer vision.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that was my introduction to computer vision. I just fell in love with it. I stayed at that company for a while. We were way ahead of the curve. Like every single computer vision idea that is popular today or has found legs or business model, we probably explored all of them back there.
Right.
We were just really ahead of the curve. So that's where I met my current co-founder and partner in Navneet. So we've worked together for about 20 years. His background is in
Say
computer
more about
vision.
this, because these relationships also
Yeah.
translate over decades.
So I was very lucky to join this company, fell in love with computer vision, and I spent most of my time on product marketing, business side of things. Navneet was on research and engineering side. His background, his PhD thesis is one of the foundational pieces of core computer vision, classical core computer vision, called histogram of oriented gradients, and has like 50,000 plus citations. So he knew vision very well. So when that company, like.com, eventually got acquired by Google in 2010. So when that company got acquired by Google, we knew that we wanted to do our own company. So we just, and he had, even before the acquisition closed, he left and started working on what eventually became Flutter. And then I ended up going through the acquisition, joining Google, and then eventually he convinced me to come join him and do Flutter. And
You
it
did
was
2 separate stints at Google, right?
correct. Yeah. So that was the
after
first
the first
sprint.
acquisition.
Yes, after the first acquisition. So
Yeah.
that was 2010. I ended up leaving in 2011, joined Navneet. We felt like we had enough complementary skill set. And having gone through like.com, we realized that some of the lessons we had taken away about the startup was exactly the same. So
What
that
were some of those lessons?
that focus on a product, how to hire a team, how to build a company, or what things we would do differently if there was a like.com. So like.com was an insane team. So I'll give you an example. Head of Google robotics until maybe about 6 months ago, who's at Waymo now, Vincent Van Hook, used to be at like.com. Head of Waymo Google Research, Drago Angulov, used to be at like.com. Head of Google Robotics in New York, his name is Vikas Sidwani, was to at like.com. So back then, computer vision team was really, computer vision research world was really small. That field was very small, and we had this insanely amazing team.
So
And
the 10 of you who are doing anything meaningful all know each other.
well, small world. That's just
Small
how
world,
it worked
yeah.
out, right? That we were all there. And when we launched, so initially it was just a facial recognition company, and we were literally doing Google Photos 10 years early. So 2004, 2005. And we had 1 million pictures uploaded on the day we launched. But this is still 2005, 2006. And the thought was that, oh, maybe we can't build a company based on it because we don't know if Google Photos has a business model.
Yeah.
So we pivoted away, but this is pre-iPhone. This is
Pre-G Suite was a product.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
pre-everything. And we had more pictures than Flickr back then, or even Facebook Photos. So if we had just stayed on the path, we would have potentially been massive.
Right.
So those are little things that we think about, that when do you pivot, when not to pivot, how to think about it. So those were some of the lessons. And then how do you build a team, and what sort of team we want to build.
What did you learn about building a team?
Building a team was just that, hey, we want to hire. So one of the challenge at like.com, and this is ancient history, but we had engineering team and we had research team. And typically research and engineering is quite different. And what I mean by that is that researchers, when they do 0 to 80, build something once and then publish a paper. But then engineering is taking that 0 to 80, turning it, getting it to all the 99.9% or 100, but also doing it in a way that it works for millions and millions of users. So we had this team which never saw eye to eye. So one of the learning lesson was that, hey, we're going to find people who want to be both researchers and engineers. That was one. Second lesson was that, hey, we use quite a bit of money in search engine marketing, go-to-market strategy as we were scaling. And for us, we came back to this point of view that, no, we're just going to focus on a product and not actually spend money in customer acquisition. Product should speak for itself. So those were some of the thought process that we had, which we aligned on, and how to think about it. And yeah, so those were some of the things that helped at that time.
What did you learn about each? I guess we'll dive into each of those functions. What did you learn about building a product?
So one part was, if you kind of were in Silicon Valley in 2005, you saw the rise of Apple, from iPod to iPhone, and just changing the world. So there was always this entire focus on delightful experiences. And at like.com, the last product that we ended up building was the search engine, visual search engine, where you put an image and you search like things. And that was great, but
Did that eventually become Google Images?
correct. A Google image search for shopping.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, so that's correct. And most of our team is still actually at Google. And,
wow.
from there. So good acquisition for Google and obviously for us across the board. But we were doing that, but I don't know if that was still delightful enough product at that point in time. So one of the things, and 2009, 2010 is also where finally computer vision wasn't in vogue yet, but Microsoft Connect had come out. So these gestures and gestures-based interfaces were becoming super popular. But we had this philosophy that just like Steve Jobs created this really nice touch interface and gestures based on it, that if you're doing computer vision oriented gestures, then turning your finger or hand into a mouse, which is what Microsoft Connect did, was just a wrong way of doing it. That if you're going to build gestures, we already have a body language. So if I'm in front of a TV and I want to mute it, raising your hand up in the air and then finding that like icon mouse pointer and then trying to air click it is really cumbersome. Why can't I just shush it? That's a gesture we already have. So if we can do that, that's a huge value proposition. And we thought, why do we even need a hardware or depth sensor? Maybe we can just do it using simple RGB cameras. And this was really Navneet with his computer vision background that he just thought he could do it. So that's what we built. And that was the thing, that let's just build a really, really delightful product. So we didn't, I don't want to say we ended up building a product, but we ended up building an app that allowed users to control iTunes, Spotify, Netflix, YouTube using gestures, and gestures were play, pause.
I remember that was one of the earliest days, and Android phones were the earliest to incorporate.
That's
Symbian
correct.
phones as well.
That's correct.
Back in the day.
So that was really early, and that was we actually built edge device computer vision application in 2012 that ran on your desktops and phone before edge device as a term was coined. I don't think many people believed machine learning or machine vision was possible at that time. It was still thought of as a science project.
We lost mass adoption of gestures some point in 2010s. What happened there? What do you think happened?
So two things. One is that to finish the story, so Flutter, we were able to get people to download app on their desktop, and I believe we were #1 app in 73 different countries in Mac App Store for about 3 months. Right. And Apple picked us as one of the best apps of 2012, and we had 77 million gestures performed. But realization was that for it to work at a fidelity level or become part of it as an app, independent app, isn't a product. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to buy gestures, right? So it needed to be part of operating system, whether that was a phone-oriented operating system or a computer. But what we realized is that gestures, and this was very early on before multimodality became popular, and what we realized is that gestures are only good for some interaction, and specifically interaction with computing at distance. So if you're watching in front of a TV, then saying shush is great. But if you're trying to change channel, then a lot of people will tell us that, hey, why don't you do this? But actually, if you're going through multiple channels, our wrists are not built for 20 things. It gets tiring super fast. That's not ergonomic. So it's much easier to say, just go to ESPN channel. Right? So there are times where we realize that gestures are a good part of it, but they shouldn't be the entire interface.
Right.
And distance was the computing web problem it solves. But then world was moving to mobile, and there was no distance. Like you were right there. And cameras weren't ubiquitous in home yet. So it just felt like world wasn't ready. The infrastructure wasn't ready.
What did you learn about the world not being ready? About technologies?
Yeah, so one was that it's really hard to predict when you're ready. It's really hard to sort of know where the wave will happen or trends will happen. We were just very naive, so we said, okay, and this was Navneet. Navneet's very much this point of view that people don't think computer vision is possible. I believe computer vision is possible, and I can just make it happen using these gestures. But we didn't necessarily have any master plan or vision. We were just kind of going around 6 months in advance to say where we're going to go next. And at some point, we realized that, okay, this is not a product. This is really cool technology. We were also part of Y Combinator back then. And Paul Graham, PG, was still around. And I remember during our entire batch in winter 2012, he will see us and he's like, oh, I know you guys. You guys are technology looking for a problem to solve. Have you found one yet? And he will repeat that again and again and again. And that made us realize that we have a really cool technology, not a product. And as we were and we didn't really know where the product would be. At some point, we could have built a set-top box with a camera and enabled this thing, let's say for TV, but we didn't have a hardware background as well. But luckily for us, Apple got really interested in acquiring us because of our success on Mac App Store, and then Google got involved. And we just felt like timing-wise, we don't know when the right timing or role would be ready for what we're building, so it's better to be part of a platform. And that's where we chose to get acquired and sell to Google at that point in time.
So this is your second stint at Google. Just to bring, I guess, people up to speed is, the first company was
Like.com, yes.
That's where you met Navneet.
Yep.
Also a computer vision platform.
Yep.
But Like was working on
applying computer vision to shopping.
Computer vision to shopping, which eventually became Google Images for Shopping.
Correct.
Right. And you went to, the company got acquired, you went to Google, an incredible team. Some of them were head of Google Robotics, now Waymo, and some are head of Google Images, right? So incredible team comes out of it, right? You learn a lot about computer vision and what's possible, and you were way ahead of the time, right?
Correct.
So you come back out of Google, you end up start this other company.
Correct.
You guys understand computer vision better than anyone at this point. So you start another company, vision-based gestures. The earliest gestures we all remember, Flutter probably had something to do with it, right?
Yes.
And I think like people who grew up in that time would probably relate, right? Like
we still get a lot of people saying that was one of the coolest steps that they ever downloaded.
One of the coolest things we ever did. I remember using those early devices. So Flutter, you realize once again, it's a technology looking for a problem to solve, way ahead of its time, better suited to integrate it into a platform.
Correct.
You go back to Google.
Correct.
Google, right?
Correct.
And in all these acquisitions, what time is this? Mid 2010s around this?
This is late 2013.
2013. Okay.
2013. So this is just around the time I think ImageNet was already published, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just around the time when machine learning was becoming mainstream.
Fei Li published ImageNet.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So we might have I always say that maybe if we started a couple of years later, things would have been different.
Right.
But to 2013 was still a world where most people didn't think machine learning was possible. So it was just starting to emerge, and I think it became really popular or trend change when Google finally came out with Google Brain and the cat pictures paper, and that was I want to say sometimes 2014, 2015. I don't remember exactly.
You were still at Google at the time.
We were still at Google at that time.
So what was your role at Google when you went back, and what did you learn at the time?
So we were acquired because Google was in process of building something similar to Microsoft Connect at that time. By the time acquisition closed and we joined, that project was killed. So we ended up being part of Google Research, where we tried to incorporate our gestures into now Google Hangouts and a few other places, and YouTube and things like that. And that had somewhat of a success, but it was still ahead of the curve. I think one of the best ones that it got integrated into is Google Home Hub Next, or Google Nest Home Hub.
Right.
That has if you raise your hand, you can pause music. So that was us. So we laid some groundwork over there, but one of the realization, as I had mentioned, that we didn't build a product, and we didn't build product partly because we didn't have hardware background. So we got acquired, and literally 3 months later, Nest got acquired. And at some point after being inside Google Research for about a year, we're like, okay, let's go and learn how to do hardware, because if we go and do another company, then we don't want to be limited by the fact that, hey, we don't know how to do hardware.
Right.
That a product, if you're trying to solve a problem, you can't be arbitrarily limited to, we're only going to do software-based solution or hardware-based solution. So that's that. At that point in time, we transitioned over to Nest from inside Google.
So that's how you met Tony Fadell.
That's correct. So Tony Fadell was actually investor in Flutter as well. So we knew him.
Oh, okay. So you already knew him.
We already knew him. And once Nest was acquired, he wanted us to move. And then Nest acquired Dropcam.
Another example of compounding.
And that became Nest.
Already that
connections compound.
Connections compound. And this is something like I guess I was talking to a friend yesterday, and as someone. His dad was in the Indian Navy, my dad was in the Pakistani military.
Yeah.
So we had to move every 2 years, right? And we were reflecting on what were our learnings from that.
Yeah.
And we didn't really learn to build long-term connections because we just thought that, oh, you just go to a new place, you build up new connections, you don't learn to stay in touch, move on, do it again.
Yeah.
So we become really good at going from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
But then business happens because of these really long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether that's investments, hiring,
Yes.
talent, anything at all.
Yes.
Right? And this is so interesting. You met Tony because he invested in
And
Flutter.
then, yes.
And as you have this realization that, oh, we should do hardware, Nest gets acquired and the stars align, right?
Exactly.
You couldn't have written that story.
We couldn't have written that story. It was really a lot of serendipity. So and not only Nest got acquired, but then Nest acquired Dropcam, which is cameras, right? And cameras meant gestures and computer vision. So at that point in time, in mid 2015. Tony's essentially told us that, hey, you guys do computer vision. We acquired this company. Why don't you come over and do it? So we transitioned over, and I was only supposed to work on the computer vision side of things as a product manager.
Yeah.
But we joined, and literally a month later, both Dropcam co-founders left. So then I was supposed to do just gestures, but then they're like, no, we don't have a person who can drive from product point of view entire Nest camera portfolio. So then I get a chance to lead the entire Nest camera team from product perspective. Navneet led it from the algorithms perspective, and we were able to ship Nest Cam Outdoor, Nest Cam IQs, and Hello Doorbell. So all of the products that we worked on. And that was insane experience, insanely great experience. Just learning from Tony, which is just learning from a fire hose.
One of the best hardware brains,
exactly,
hardware product brains of all time, right? Inventor of iPod, and so many of the iconic Apple products of our time. For anyone who doesn't know Tony Fadell.
Yes, Tony Fadell is referred to as the father of iPad. He took iPod to Steve Jobs, and then ultimately ended up building it, and then obviously worked on iPhone as well. So and then Nest thermostats,
which are in all of our homes right now.
So multiple iconic products. So he's absolutely the most brilliant or best product marketing hardware person that I've ever worked with. Product person, I should say, more than even hardware
What did
person.
you learn from him about hardware products?
I think he says is the best. He says that you should never do a hardware company unless the product that you're trying to, or problem you're trying to solve, cannot be solved without hardware. So that was
what do you
really.
mean by that?
Which is, there was this time between, I want to say 2011 to 2015, where he would say that, hey, there were a lot of IoT companies being started, and a lot of times that problem could have been solved just using software, right? I think that question really came up with potentially recent companies in Humane and Rabbit as well, that we really need hardware for this thing.
Yeah.
And maybe there is a need, maybe there isn't. No one knows, right?
Yeah.
But his point is that hardware is hard, 10x harder. So his entire point is, if you want to have a problem that is stuck in your mind, you should look for every single which way that you can just solve it using software, because that's so much easier than trying to do hardware. And if the only way you can potentially solve, which is you can't really build a robot using hardware, right? So if the only way to, using software, so if only way to solve it is you doing hardware, then go ahead and do the hardware. But it should be something you do grudgingly, not willingly.
That's an interesting, I think, framework for thinking about when to go to a hardware solution.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think the second thing that compounded, and Tony was really helpful in this as well as PG, is that we as engineers, nerds, we're excited about technology. We're in Silicon Valley. We we want to solve problems, and we are problem solvers and builders. And our natural instinct is to think of some problem and immediately jump to a solution. And what really matters is to actually take a step back and keep peeling the layers of the onion to see what the problem really is, get to the essence of it, and then solve it. Which is, internally we talk about this quite a bit, that all the robotists love robotics. We love AI. Robots are cool as hell, right? But consumers, whether that's enterprise or homeowners, or in our case families, they're not really looking for robots. They're looking for solution to their problems.
Yeah.
And robots and AI is just a means to an end.
Yeah.
So what is that end?
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't spend time thinking about it. We certainly didn't do that at Flutter.
Yeah.
So that was one of the other compounding, that make sure you're always solving a problem.
I would say that majority of the consumers don't know how internet works.
Yeah, it's
Right.
I mean, ubiquity is much better now than it is, but
Yeah.
it takes time. Ultimately, it's
Right.
really just solving the problem. I don't think one thing I still remember is that if you're in Silicon Valley, you're absolutely 5 years ahead. Like good example is if you go on Twitter, Studio Ghibli is everywhere. Everyone is doing that images. Everyone is aware of 4.0, right? You go to Instagram, Facebook, it's probably not there.
Yeah.
Those social networks, you don't see those
So
things.
Maliha actually mentioned that it's all over Instagram as well.
Yeah. Oh, is it okay?
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's just like okay, which and maybe first came Twitter, then Instagram,
Yeah.
and then is it spread to Facebook yet? So it's sort of crazy how certain things
Yeah.
percolate down. But I'm pretty sure that no one is in Florida who are not in tech sitting about thinking Studio Ghibli right now.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets mainstream, it will take a while.
Yeah.
And we learned this. So I'll give you an example. Actually, how early you are. So I have my Twitter handle is Mehul, my first name.
Yeah.
And there are tons of Mehuls in the world. And the only reason I got that is because in 2006, I heard about Twitter, signed up for it. I think I was like a 3,300 user or something.
Right.
Went onto Twitter, and most of the tweets were like, hey, I just brushed my teeth and I'm going to work.
It was
And
Instagram before its time.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. And I logged out and never logged back again until 2011.
Right.
Because I wasn't necessarily the most socially savvy person. I'm still
Yeah.
not. So I'm not a big social media user except for Twitter now.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my realization that you actually sometimes get to certain products way before
Mm-hmm.
it becomes mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fascinating to get to it in 2006, and it really started growing in 2008, and by 2011 it was quite popular.
Yeah.
So it just you're ahead of the curve across the board.
I first joined in 2010 and then had to delete my account. So yes, I wasn't that early.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And for some reason, I had the worst username. My username was the same as my email, which I have no idea. And I have no idea why I picked Malik Sofyan 217. And I'm like, yeah, everything should be the same. Consistency.
Consistency.
Right? Consistency of branding. And then
Yes.
I realized, oh my god, I should have taken first handle Sofyan while I was still out there.
Yeah.
But so this is really interesting. I guess one of the lessons there is optimize for solving the consumer's or the customer's problem.
Customers, be it
And-
enterprise
yeah.
or
And then go from that framework. Obsess
Correct.
over the solution to the problem.
Correct.
And don't obsess over the technology
yes,
that you're nerdy about. Right?
yes, and you know, I believe there was a I could never find this article, but I read it somewhere. There was a lost Steve Jobs article or interview where he talked about this point of view that most people think of he's like, the reason Apple products are so simple is because we think of a problem deeply, then we come up with a solution. Even after we come up with a solution, we just leave it alone for 10 days and come back. And then the question we ask is everything we talked about needed? Can we keep deleting items?
Yeah.
Right? And deleting is really, really important. And this is really fascinating because only other place where I see deleting happening is really Tesla and how the cars are, because Tesla is the first car that doesn't have any knob to turn on the headlights.
Yeah.
That's gone, right? Then even locking your car and unlocking your car, that's sort of like a relic of mechanical past. So why do we still have lock and unlock?
Yeah.
If I close the door, it should just lock.
I know.
Right?
Why do you have to think about it?
Exactly. So or there was no start button with the electric car. You just press the brake and it started. So I get excited about things that product takes away versus adding, and that deleting is really hard part. So you talked about in the context of iPhone that we had like 5 buttons initially, and then we just kept saying like, do we need every single one of this button? And eventually settled with one button in the middle and one on the side, and that was it. So it's like a lot of it is just thinking on the same thing again and again and again and peeling the layers of the onion, and that's not something we do because we're in a hurry and this idea that someone will steal my idea, let me just get started. But really, you have to sit back, think deeply, and
Let ideas play out.
Exactly, and that was the lesson we learned by 2017. So when we started Matic, these things were in our head, and we spent quite a bit of time thinking through what we were going to do with Matic before we actually started working on it.
That's something I've experienced as well. You can have a great whiteboarding session, 4 hours, come up with some of the most exciting ideas, right?
Yes.
And you let it sit and also have conversations,
Yes.
right? Go back to your friends, peers, mentors, people who will use the product.
Yes.
You have some conversations, you come back, and you end up realizing how much of it was unnecessary.
Yes.
And you really get to narrow down. And sometimes that realization comes in 10 days, sometimes in 2 months. You cannot
Precisely.
time it.
Precisely, you
cannot time
can't.
it.
You
and
can't.
sometimes more than that, sometimes
Yes,
a year,
yes,
right? It
yes.
really depends.
100%. You have to be immersed on the idea. There were a lot of things that we are doing here which weren't obvious to us on day one. You have to keep reading, and it's really just in hindsight, everything seems obvious. Like, oh, why didn't we think of that?
Yeah.
But initially, like, I'll give you a really, like, in hindsight, it seems like the dumbest thing that we were thinking about. But we were hell-bent initially. We're like, wait, battery is such a limitation.
Yeah.
Why don't we just teach robot to plug themselves in? Maybe there will be just like this long wire that it can pull out if it wants to do it. And then I'm like, that's such a dumb idea.
The biggest wire in the house.
Yeah,
right?
biggest wire in the house, and now you're creating obstacles all over the place because people can't cross over. But for a while, like, that was the idea that we.
But it's coming from the right place in the sense that you're thinking about not worrying about batteries, right?
Yeah.
Batteries are not, when you started probably 2017, batteries are not at advanced.
Exactly.
And it's following probably the same Moore's law,
Yes.
right? But at the time,
It
you had
wasn't
to work
obvious.
with what you had.
Yeah, exactly. So or we're like, wait, we just don't want dock. Like, docks are such a nuisance. Like, why do you want another thing? So there were a bunch of other things that we were thinking about. But initially, you go through this idea and you're like, okay, you fall in love with it, and then you realize over time that it's very impractical. But that takes time. And then this metaphor that really came together was, I remember watching this movie Passenger. You might be
I
familiar.
think I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, with the
Sci-fi?
Chris Pratt. Yeah,
Right,
Chris
yeah,
Pratt.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he wakes up and he's the only one on the ship, and he's kind of bored. And I think Jennifer Aniston was there or Jennifer Lawrence. Yes, Jennifer Lawrence was in that movie too. And he wakes up and he's bored and there's no one to talk to. And at some point he's sitting there in a cafeteria and food drops and these robots come around and immediately clean it. And he's like, wait, hey, wait, and they disappear. So he takes a spoon of his cereal and throws again, and they come out. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, continuously clean floor. Like, why are we cleaning once a day? That doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
Like, if this is a robot doesn't get tired.
Yeah.
It doesn't have muscles. It doesn't get bored.
Yeah.
It should be just constantly cleaning because we want to live in a perpetually clean home with perpetually clean homes. We don't want to do it. So robots should just be willing to do it infinite amount of times.
Yeah.
So then you start thinking like, wait, then why are robots built to sit on the dock 23 hours a day? That doesn't make sense. All this sort of questions comes because we were thinking about this space and robots in general, and then you see this movie and you see this manifestation of it, and that gives you idea. And then we talked about one other one that I always thought, maybe I'm not sure, but I always feel that in home you want a robot that's a bit more cuddly and friendly and things. So I always imagine that if they're Rosie the robot, and that was also female manifestation, right? But it's like so Betamax is a good one. So it's
FAA
fascinating.
Or the FDA equivalent of like home robots doesn't exist, but like this is almost self-imposed. I've seen it from robotics companies where you're going through a checklist of 1,000 things, right?
Correct.
When it comes to either safety or just user experience and safety and like. You're thinking of so many. What are some of those considerations actually?
I think so. Safety, privacy, usefulness, all those things matter. I think in a consumer robotics, delight and emotional connection is actually quite important. Most people underestimate that. Which is I'm sure you have a shirt that you absolutely love or shoes that you absolutely love, and these are commodity products, but you just love them, and you can't really explain why you love that item. In the same way, if it's a utility product, it's very hard to create emotions around it or word of mouth around it. You don't really get.
That's also a good business model.
It's exactly. So then it's a great way. Like you want to solve the problem, but you want to create a little bit of a belonging in it. So we always wanted to make robots that belong in a home, that they should be part of the family, so to speak.
Is there a product today that makes you feel that way?
I think people love their iPhones, right? People are passionate about it.
But it's not an emotional attachment.
I think if it was scratched, like you to know how emotionally connected you are, you should take someone's iPhone and try to make a scratch out of it, and they'll yell. Or cars are that way, right? There are people who love their cars. They modify it.
With cars, yes.
Yeah, so there is a very utility with cars are something you fall in love with and kind of do it. Homes are that way. Right. There is a difference between house and home. People go inside their house decorate it the way they like it, make it the way they like it, and then it feels homely, and then you have emotional connection to it. So every single item inside it has emotional connection to it. So there is some ways.
You want to bring out very similar emotions with
Yeah,
robots.
yeah, the delight, like a delight, following, or just connections.
Right.
And I don't want to say just robots. It should apply to any product. If you don't build those emotional connections, it's very hard. But those products that survive sort of test of time are emotional. And another one, like, anyone talking about In-N-Out Burger will probably talk with passion and emotion, and it's just a burger. But that's another one
I've
that
observed
has maintained.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
I actually think it's overrated, but
Yeah.
and maybe California will probably dunk on me for that. But yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, I mean, to me, just overrated or not, I don't have any choice. I love it personally, but I just find it fascinating that purely from a product point of view, here's a product that hasn't changed for 80 years now.
Yeah.
In-N-Out started just around the time when McDonald's started. They haven't changed the price. It's still probably after all this inflation, still one of the cheapest burger you can purchase.
Yeah, that is true.
Right? No menu change. You literally feel like you walked into 60s diners.
Yeah.
Right? 50s, 60s diners. Nothing has ever changed. Yet each In-N-Out store does 10x the revenue of McDonald's store.
Yeah.
Each one of them. And if you show up anywhere Friday night in any In-N-Out, it's like a zoo. And it's just crowded. And it's just mind-boggling. They never advertise.
A cult-like movement.
And they never advertise.
Right.
This is fascinating. I've never seen any ad. It's purely called the secret menu, which is not so secret anymore. Yet everyone. So how do you build a product like that? That's like something that survives generations. And in terms of just pure love and attachment and cult.
I can see you've thought a lot about In-N-Out.
Yeah. Yes.
Are there,
I've just thought a lot about products.
About products. So
Yes.
from In-N-Out, what's something you are now incorporating into Matic about building those delightful experiences, that secret menu sort of an experience, or not marketing?
I think, so if I take a step back and think about what makes In-N-Out unique, it's really they just identified one thing, and you may love their taste or hate their taste, but it's really just the taste of the burger.
It's unique.
It's unique, it's different, it's consistent. Which is many companies start out being simple or tasteful, but over time can you sustain it, and that gets harder. And what In-N-Out has done is build their entire system and turn it into some sort of a factory where for 80 years they've been able to sustain it and keep that consistency across the board, which is insanely hard. And the fact that they haven't changed the menu and they haven't changed anything creates a simplicity, which is when you go to In-N-Out, you don't have to think about what you're going to order. You already know. Right? Versus if you go to McDonald's, enough things changes that you still kind of look at the menu and think about it.
Right.
And every decision is a cognitive load. So if you keep removing the friction, keep adding simplicity, and then just create consistency, sometimes you don't need to exceed the expectation. You just need to meet the expectation again and again and again consistently. So one of the things we talk about at Matic is that we do want to do a lot of different things, but first and foremost is just making sure that it does its job consistently without requiring users' attention again and again and again. So that consistency, that it just cleans floors and it doesn't get stuck. That's already a huge value proposition. And then you can add top of it, but then just simplifying it, which is how do we make sure that you can just tell it what to do and it does it for you and it just works. So that's really not all that simple, different from what Apple does. But I think the thread amongst the great or iconic product is almost always simplicity.
Deletion is hard.
Deletion and simplicity.
Deletion is hard, yeah.
Yeah.
As I'm thinking about this, I remembered that for one of the interviews for the podcast, we're doing a partnership where we want to distribute the written versions of the interviews.
Correct.
And the managing editor I spoke to on the other end said that, okay, so these 90-minute interviews are 160 pages.
Yes.
Or 130 pages on a Google Doc.
Yes.
If you can bring me 3, right, well, we can publish maybe 2.
Sure.
And I've never obviously edited. I've never run a school or college magazine, right? And I don't know how useful ChatGPT would be with any of this. So we go around figuring it out, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
This is incredible. We can get down to 80 pages. We can get down to 30 pages. How do I go to 3 pages?
Yeah.
Right. In a different realm, but a very similar experience. And deletion is incredibly hard.
Deletion is incredible. And there are so many interesting things you do. And I think I'll give you another example. even though WhatsApp started in Mountain View, I remember hearing about WhatsApp for the first time because back then there were a number of messaging apps. For the first time because my friends and family in India started using it and they told me to download it. So even though it was a Silicon Valley company, it actually became popular internationally far more than actually in the United States and much earlier than United States.
WhatsApp, which is very interesting, it did grow internationally way more adopted
Correct.
internationally than it
Correct.
is in the US.
Because it just worked and they went with breadth that we're going to work on any platform versus every single thing that every other app that started, which was similar to WhatsApp back then, took the route that we're just going to make it work on iOS.
And
so
WhatsApp in India is also a very different product.
Very different.
They have different offerings. You can do payments. You have the equivalent of Apple Pay within WhatsApp, and they don't have that in all markets.
They don't have that. And it's grown quite a bit, but even today, the reason I bring this up is even today, if you join WhatsApp, you know what it's for. It's communicating with your friends.
Yeah.
It's still the same interface.
Yeah.
It's been...
You have no clue how they make money.
16. They don't, so they don't know how to make money. And they're luckily, Facebook, they're part of Facebook, so they don't have to. But it's simple.
Yeah.
Versus... in 2005, I joined Facebook, or 6, I don't know, whenever I joined Facebook, I joined because I wanted to meet my friends. Today, if you join Facebook, what are you there for?
Yeah.
Are you there for videos?
It's not clear.
Marketplace? It's
Instagram is clear. I think Facebook,
yeah.
From what I've heard, it's the Facebook groups has become a product for niche communities, right? Especially different generations.
Precisely. The point simply is that it's not clear
and clear at all.
It's part of the same company where one product has remained simple and another one hasn't. That's the way I think about it.
Instagram and WhatsApp, it's still very clear offering.
Correct.
And for Facebook, it's not. And I stopped using it a few years ago, which is
correct.
It probably explains. If Mark Zuckerberg is listening, maybe he gets an idea from this.
It's just an observation to me. Just an amazing thing, right? Yeah.
We've gone through an incredible timeline of how technologies play out. Being early on technologies, you've also mentioned, learning as you built the early teams, learning about how R&D teams would integrate with engineering teams, and R&D teams are doing, the 0 to 80, and then engineering is 80 to 100. And in these last 20 years, what have you learned about how would you define breakthrough innovation, and what have you learned about how breakthroughs happen?
I think the best answer is, so I like to read books, and one of the books I read about, I want to say maybe a year ago, was this book called Project Hail Mary, the guy who also wrote The Martian. And in that one, there is a quote, I won't spoil the book, but there is a quote that people think that breakthrough innovation is this eureka moment that happens, and you're like, one fine day you wake up and you solve the problem. And he's like, it's never a eureka moment where it's really just a grind and you keep solving the problem incrementally, little by little by little, and over the years, at some point, enough compounds that it feels like a breakthrough, right? So to me...
eureka moment, 20 years in the making.
Yeah, exactly. I think Patrick Collison has this amazing quote where Stripe became hugely successful, and someone said that, oh my God, you guys are an overnight success. And he said, oh yeah, we are overnight success 5 years in making. Yeah. Right. So that was really a brilliant quote. And that's just how it is, which is a lot of it is just compounding and grind, and there is no eureka moment. I think there are times where... So more than breakthrough moments, it's really just this idea that you have all this technology, how do you productize it? So I think more than building the models or research, and obviously OpenAI is amazing at it, what OpenAI really got right is somehow figured out how to productize LLM. Exactly. ChatGPT, like no one would have ever... Like you can't imagine a company going out and saying that we're going to build ChatGPT and that's going to be an amazing product, or what problem you're solving. So sometimes you catch this lightning on the bottle, but I think they kept thinking that, okay, we have this incredible LLM foundation models or AI. How do we productize it? And I think that's really what they're great at, which is just taking this technology and turning into products.
And in many ways, company building is about taking the technology that through research has reached that 0 to 80 journey. And how do you prioritize it? It's all like the building a business is all around how do you prioritize it?
And two ways of doing it, right? Which is OpenAI was clearly a research lab that found a way to productize things, and is more of a product company now. On a flip side, it's ironic because Sam Altman was one of the earliest, first part of the first batch at YC, and Paul Graham always talks about making something people want, which is build something that, so he starts with a problem and works backwards, right? So it's very two opposite way of doing it, and neither of them are right or wrong. It's just what you really want to go build.
Yeah, there's no one way to build a company. That's
no,
the
there's
one thing
no.
Also
at the same
realized.
At the same time, I'll take a slight tangent, but this might be very helpful for some people. But we were part of Y Combinator Winter 2012 batch. I think there were about 60 companies. Everything that was cool and sexy and futuristic, including Flutter, died or got acquired or is no longer around. The most successful company out of that batch is Gusto, the payroll company.
Interesting.
Okay. Which solved extremely unsexy schlep problem. The second most successful is Amplitude Analytics.
Oh, I see. Okay. I know
Third
Spencer.
one is Third one is and Spencer actually pivoted after a demo day, if I remember correctly, to this. So this Amplitude Analytics was second. Third one is a Rescale, which is high performance computing cloud. So a place where you can sort of simulate Boom Arrow or things like that. So those were some of the companies that were solving real problems that survived. Everything that was sort of really cool app or really cool gestures or technology sort of died away. And that was and I also and PG actually wrote an essay on this called Schlep Blindness, which is one of my favorite essays in 2015, I believe. And he talked about this point of view that most engineers and techies want to solve cool problems, but really the best ideas are ones that are just obvious problems that no one wants to work on. And in 2009, payment was one of them when Stripe started. And I remembered Stripe and because when we were trying to apply to YC, YC and PG had this Meet a YC company day. One of those companies was Stripe. They were still on Ramona Street, maybe 5 or 10 people company. And I remember walking in and meeting John Collison, who was there, and showing him Flutter demo. And he thought it was really one of the coolest technology that he had seen. And I remember also thinking that, man, payment, that sounds kind of boring, or hasn't PayPal already solved that problem? Well, it turns out that's $100 billion idea and a company versus Flutter, which was acquired for much less amount. Still $40 million, nothing to scoff at, but still much smaller. So that was one of the learning lessons that, at least for us, that solve a tedious problem that most people don't want to go solve. And if you can build a good product there might be an opportunity.
I guess but within that, it's also about making progress. Through whether that's the Silicon Valley ideology or whether it's being in the technology sector, right, or being surrounded by startups, right? You also want the Boom Supersonics of the world.
Oh, absolutely.
You also want, right, who might not make money straight away, right? Who might 100%. Not become the $100 billion company in 5 years or 10 years, but they're on that trajectory probably 20, 30 years down the line, right?
Yes.
And that's something probably worth doing.
Oh, 100%. But Boom actually is solving a problem in my mind.
Yes. So,
right? Which is...
but I also wanted to bring up the other side, right? That there are problems on all sides. Like, I guess optimizing for problems would not necessarily... They're not necessarily boring in the sense, right?
Oh no, that's correct.
It's about what interests you and how, I guess.
So sometimes they're not boring. Sometimes, but
I wanted to change the framing a bit for it. I guess.
That's fair. I think that's fair. There are also really, really exciting problems that are out there. How you solve it is there.
If a problem excites you and you can obsess over it day and night for 5 years, where it's compounding and can become a business.
100%. Go for it.
Probably.
Go for it. But what I would say is that I think starting a company to build a supersonic sounds really cool today. I'm not sure when they started in 2017.
Oh no, it wasn't. My dream.
I think it was still probably would have. It was just a Schlep maybe as a pipe name. So it's like it was still one of those ideas that you just didn't think was feasible. Or same thing with SpaceX or Tesla back in the days, right? So which is what is perceived as cool today may not have been
Right.
perceived at that point in time. So that's where
Yeah.
it still resonates.
Which
But
probably sets them up for success.
they set them up for
Which
success.
is the different side
Yes,
of
yes,
this, right?
exactly. I think there is boringness, there is tediousness, but there is also just really, really hard problems, and that
Yeah.
itself is a schlep.
So
Because
that framing, I think I like better. Extremely hard problems, but then how do you bring that 80 to 100
correct.
product and engineering mindset
Correct.
to it, right?
Correct.
Which is which is what you've gotten good at in the last
Which is
few experiences.
and I would give a little bit of a credit to obviously Elon Musk, but also Peter Thiel and Sam Altman and some of these really ambitious entrepreneurs who went out and said, we're going to start these crazy companies that no one has started, right? And at some point, Peter Thiel came up with this quote that, hey, we wanted flying cars and we got 140 characters. And that really started out which is, they also co-founded Palantir, which was a really ambitious company.
We could argue that 140 characters are changing the course of the country more than
Maybe, yes. But my point is that they brought the attention to this deep tech problem. They
100%.
brought the attention
Yeah.
to hard tech. And I know like Sam also funded really, really amazing problems before OpenAI became OpenAI in terms of a nuclear fusion and all kinds of stuff. So he really started that.
I was with one of the people from the YC team back in that era, in Sam's era, and that 2016 or like 2015 to 2019 era, they funded a lot of hardware startups way
correct.
before it was cool, and all of those are now translating.
That's correct.
Many-
A lot of deep tech startups.
A lot of
so
deep tech startups,
yes.
which I think was contrarian at the time.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't the case, or maybe it I don't know how PJ thought of it, but I think Sam and, Elon and Peter and all those guys get a lot of credit.
Yeah, they were 100%. I would so. How do you think about hiring, and how do you look for agency in people?
Okay, that's a good question. So I tend, one of the things that we are looking for is people who just have done I guess agency is some version of winning.
Yeah.
Which is I always feel like cream rises to the top. So if you've
That's a good
somehow
analogy.
it doesn't necessarily be the rest school, but there is some spark where you achieved something. And that's
some
usually
proof of exceptionalism.
some proof of exception, or some proof of desire to just win, obsession to win, and getting there.
What questions would you ask to get to know, or is it like just working together on projects?
I think there are some. So it's hard to know, but you can see obsession when you ask questions around, like, obviously what drives you and not what drives you, because everyone's the cliched answer is, oh, I want to make an impact. But it's like, okay, what does impact mean? What do you mean beyond that? What have you done lately? And the thing that I always look for is, what have you achieved? Don't tell me what have you done, which is the response is, can you tell me what have you achieved? And it might be very simple achieved, that, okay, I achieved doing this impossible project in my class, or something that was hard. So that's one. And then two things is that, is there any example of self-perseverance in their past? Where they got obsessed with one piece of the puzzle and just kept at it and
Kept knocking the door down.
Exactly. That sort of so that a bit of a grit and perseverance, and then being able to just achieve kind of gets us there.
Right.
But it's a hard problem. Hiring is not easy.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up hiring because I guess you would have learned that in time as well. Talent is like a huge piece of the puzzle.
And you can't really get to know someone really well in 3, 4, 5 hours. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are certain people who just gets every single hiring right, but I don't think.
So.
Yeah. So I really believe. I think there was an analogy. I don't remember where I read, but there was this idea that even if you're the worst salesperson, if you just meet enough people, there is one person who is likely to be ready to buy, and you'll end up making sales. Right? Reps. If you're genuinely good, maybe you'll do 3 or 4 out of 10. And if you're exceptional, you do 6 or 7. But there is no full batting.
No.
So in the same exact way, hiring is also that you're probably going to get maybe 60-70% of hiring right, but then there is a part where you're just not going to get it right. And some of those values or alignments are not necessarily clear. So over time, you get better at judging it, but I don't think you ever get perfect. And then it's just being honest with yourself and making a mistake when it's time to move on, or when, correcting the mistake. So yeah.
What are some things you've learned over time?
Man, I think
About interviewing, about firing.
in general, what I've learned is that you can't really give people, it's people either have ambitions and motivation and desire, or they don't, and you can't really push that into people. Either they understand how to own things, or they don't at some point. And if they don't, then it's really hard to make that click. So there was a time, I guess, at some point earlier in our career where we would say, oh, this guy is really brilliant. Maybe he doesn't know how to execute here or own, and we can teach that. And we've sort of come to now point of view that, no, I really don't want to teach the attitude piece of the puzzle. That's just ingrained. So I think again, Sam Altman has a good analogy where he says, hire for attitude first, aptitude second, and then skills. And I think that's a correct analogy, that attitude is really critical, and either you have that willingness to break doors or figure things out, or you don't.
What do you think shapes that, and do you think that can be learned?
I think it can, motivation can happen at any point in your career. You don't necessarily need to have it, but it is a bit of a thing where you're trying to do inception, and I don't think you can incept as a thing. It's sort of what clicks or what gives that desire or motivation is different for everyone. I absolutely think that some adversity early in your life, some adverse challenge early in your life does create that. Some hunger of any kind.
Puts a chip on your shoulder.
It puts some chips on your shoulder, exactly. But I don't know if there is one thing that can say this does it. I think probably grit or some sort of a failure or some sort of a sort of disappointment definitely plays a role into it. But yeah, I don't know.
Because we're talking about how, I guess, you could teach people motivation, or how you could inject ownership into people. I think this is a great segue into talking about your son.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
He's 18 and he wants to drop out of high school. He's 2 months out of graduating, and he's created a YouTube channel where he has 300,000 followers.
Correct.
Did you?
I have nothing to do with it. I
was there something in the brought up where he felt that he had to go through some adversity? Was it?
I think no.
Because growing up, right? Like, this is something that I think about as I haven't had kids yet. But
yes.
I asked people who do have kids, like, how do you raise children? Like, as someone, for example, you have been through these different experiences that have shaped you the way you are, but now that your kids are growing up in Silicon Valley, arguably have a different starting point. They definitely have a very different platform.
Correct.
How do you make sure they take the best advantage of it and don't, become lazy?
I think part of it is obviously telling the stories of your struggle and showing them, or me working hard and
I remember my dad doing it.
Yeah, right. So some understanding of it, which doesn't make sense initially when you're early in your early childhood, but later on as you grow up, it actually makes a difference. But at least with Ahan, my older one, he was always obsessive about something or the other. So he had this intense ability to focus from very early childhood.
Interesting.
And he went through various periods. So there was a period where he was obsessed with Minecraft. Then he got into Nerf guns and was obsessed with that. And then started making Nerf gun videos and was doing that for a while. And then at some point, pandemic happened and he went into his room and we thought he was in school, but apparently he was playing Minecraft again. And then he started making videos, and I have no idea how or when. The only place I realized is at some point my nephew came over and he's like, Mom, Uncle, do you realize your Ahan has 7 million followers on TikToks? I'm like, what? And I didn't know. And then I started asking him questions like, yeah, but TikTok doesn't pay me. It's a little boring. I want to do other videos. So then he went to YouTube Shorts that were coming out and kind of got 300,000 subscribers. And then he's like, I'm bored of short videos. I'm going to do long form videos now.
Oh my God.
And then he did
So your
6.
son is like an influencer at TikTok at this point, and you don't like.
I didn't know
it's just
anything
like a
about
normal
it.
thing for him. He's like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's just something he loves, something he sort of gets excited about. And I think if you go deep into it, you can solve the problem. So his entire point is that, look, there is an internet available. There are things that I want to learn.
Yeah.
And right now he's really into music making. So he's making his music. So he just wants to go very deep into it. And to him, school is something that is that is a distraction that takes away from what he really wants to do. So it's not that he doesn't want to work hard or he doesn't have the discipline. He works really hard. He stays up at night. But for him, working on things that he enjoys is a lot more important than things that he doesn't enjoy. And school is something he doesn't enjoy, unfortunately. And I think some of it has to do with the pandemic as well, because he started his high school in 2020, right? So 2021, so right in the middle of pandemic. So he never sort of formed the bonds and connections that you would normally form if you had started in person, which changes things a little bit for that generation of kids. So for him, this idea that, hey, I just want to go and enjoy. So that's how we got into YouTube. Then now he's into music, and his entire point is, I will learn whatever I want to learn on my own. I don't know if it's necessary for me to go to school, and I don't think that's correct. What I mean by not from the school perspective, but I do think that you do learn a lot from apprenticeship of some kind, one way or the other.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
You learn from apprenticeships.
Correct.
But not from school, though.
But school does give you sometimes professors or doers who have accomplished things who can give you apprenticeship if they see styling.
Does
sort of
high school necessarily give you role model-like figures?
I think it does, because some of them may have, if you look for it, which is someone who has obsessed in any sort of field, whether it's being a teacher and gotten good at it, there are parallels to draw, right?
Sure.
Someone may have become a high school teacher after doing some amazing things in their lives. They may have, a lot of college professors are former entrepreneurs. The same thing is true for high school as well. Or they may have won an Olympic medal and now they're a coach. So there is an element of things that you can learn. And in the same way, he wants to do videos and things, and he can certainly do it on his own, but finding your community, finding your friend, finding some apprenticeship,
I think
can help.
community is still a big part of it.
Yes.
Learning
how
to build relationships is a big part of it. But if learning how to learn goes away and you don't necessarily have the best pool of people to seek apprenticeships from, I don't know if in that situation, the traditional model of school or college is that relevant.
So that's a great question, and I think I personally...
So I agree with different parts of why you need to go to school, right?
Yes. I don't...
But I don't know if that's still being served by the current model.
Correct. So school definitely, in some ways, needs to be reinvented in terms of how you learn and how you think about it. But as we talked about early on, there are aspects of it that I do value. One aspect is that it does teach you to be disciplined, and discipline does help you in your life. And if you're not at 15 or 16 in your formative years, if you're not taught to do things on time or be disciplined, you will never learn those skills. And once you're 25 or 28 or 30, that gets harder. And that discipline is simply that, just show up somewhere on time, show up somewhere on there. And that does matter when you have a team, because you can't really do everything alone. So that's one. The second part is obviously the social aspect, which is how do people how are you build relationship, friends, things like that.
I'm going to dive into the discipline thing more, because I'll take my example. School didn't teach me anything about discipline.
Sure. It doesn't. I mean.
And I'll dive into it a little bit more just to clarify it. My framing. When something is when your skin is in the game. And when something is on the line, I think, and when you can see that you're either not going to, you have 5 people relying on you who will not get paid if you don't act a certain way, whether that's showing up at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning without liking that, right? Which I don't like, but sometimes I have to, right?
Yep.
Or whether that's, or whether that's learning that if you don't fulfill this contract, and whether that's like
Sure.
doing a lot of legal work that you absolutely don't enjoy doing, right?
Yep.
That's probably discipline, right?
Yes,
but
100%.
it's because of things on the line, and that probably teaches you way more about discipline. And I would say prioritization is directly related to discipline, right? It's if something is not a priority for you and something else isn't on the line, then it's very hard to be disciplined about it.
Sure.
I mean, at least that's how for my previous job, my boss tried to get me to show up at 9 a.m. I never showed up at 9 a.m. I always showed up at 11:30 a.m. If he's watching, he's one of the best mentors I've had. I never showed up to college on time.
Yep.
I never showed up to school on time.
Yep.
And I don't think they taught me anything about discipline. And I've been fairly, I think,
and I'm not
I've been
saying
high functioning, right? So I've been fairly okay.
So I think in America they call real world school of hard knocks. So school of hard knocks is the best teacher, obviously, as you grow and as you're trying to accomplish anything, that teaches you stuff. I do think that if you had some of that stuff early on, you might have gotten there faster. Like, I don't know. You sort of have to ask that. It doesn't mean you will learn certain things at different paces in your life, but I do think some structure is necessary, and parents can do that. Right? I'm not saying that school is necessary. You can definitely do homeschooling, but homeschooling also requires structure.
Right.
Homeschooling also requires discipline. Exactly. So it's just element of structure, discipline, just interaction with how do you learn to. Because high school is the first time where people's personality develop. That's the first time you learn to sort of have disagreement. First time you belong in a team environment.
So I think like the word, what you're describing, what describes that best is professionalism.
Professionalism is a good way of saying it. Yes.
So professionalism and
that's a better way of saying it.
Knowing the stakes that are involved, right? Knowing that opportunities don't come easy.
Yes.
Right.
And that's a better word. That's in sports you say rookie versus how to be a pro, and that's correct. Yeah, how to be a pro in whichever domain you are at.
So as I'm reflecting, right, I'm thinking that yes, I wish that I had more context on like why we have to do this, right?
Yes.
Because it didn't make sense at all.
Yes.
Like I don't know why I'm like
doing this.
If I am like 50% more productive than the rest of the team or 70% more productive than the rest of the team, then why do I need to show up at 9 a.m., right? And then your manager can, no matter what they say, they can't get you to show up at 9 a.m.
So that's where I know you grew up in Pakistan. I went to high school in India, and I hated my high school in India. So what I mean by that is I think Indian or Asian system is a little bit built after British system, and that's much more about discipline without really explaining.
For the sake of it.
Exactly, which is they never explain why, and it's also a memorization based system. US high schools, I would give a little bit more credit because they're much more about explaining things to you, and they tend to do a little bit better job of why. And in his school, like even though it's a high school, there is an experiential engineer class as well. So there are classes which are just project based and not necessarily just the exams and finals and typical midterms and homework. So there is an element of that as well. But even just finishing those projects on time or making progress and not waiting to the last
Learning
moment.
Professionalism.
Exactly. So those are all little things. So I think US education is slightly different.
Yeah, okay.
I was a
I
horrible.
think that's a good caveat. That's a good caveat. Like I guess for
compared to India.
I grew up in Pakistan. My schooling looked very different, and the US was very different.
I hated my schooling in India.
Despite that, I do meet high school students and college students every now and then that still disagree with the US education systems as well.
Nothing is perfect, right?
Nothing is perfect. I was thinking about motivation as you were talking about this, right? And I'm curious where your motivation came from, because you had a $40 million exit for your second company.
Correct.
And were you reasonably wealthy after one of those exits?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Let's on a I guess
or more
normal
money
scale, right? Like
yes, or it's definitely
wealthy.
Bigger than I had ever imagined. But yes,
right.
Yes, yeah.
Where does the inspiration and motivation come to embark on then the harder? There are plenty of, I'm sure, deca-millionaire friends you have or centimillionaire friends you have who decide to retire, go into the shadows.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And not take on another 30-year project.
Yeah.
Where they're probably, in the office 7 p.m. or on weekends some days, right?
Entrepreneurship is never a rational decision, right? It's the most illogical, emotional decisions you can make. I don't think we ever started company, whether it was Flutter or joined Salesforce or joined Google, for the money. Money was always the outcome of it. It's sort of its output, the score. But you don't join the game, or you don't. Well, you want to win, but you don't join because of just winning alone. At some point, you enjoy the journey and you enjoy the mission. So for us, the honest answer is that in 2017, we sort of looked around and we're like, okay, we've been so early with computer vision. We've been in this field for 2005 and Navneet since 2000. And computer vision is just finally getting to a point where all these things that we were dreaming about are possible. And while we had done some really good sort of manifestation of gestures or product experiences, or even at Nest we built Nest cameras, which were really, really good products, we had yet to put everything together and build what we thought was an iconic product. So iPod is an iconic product, iPhone is an iconic product, Model S is, ChatGPT is, and Nest thermostat is, but Nest cameras weren't that. So we just felt like, okay, we've learned all these things and are much sort of wiser, relatively speaking, than we were when we were in 20s, and we have this deep experience. And if we don't take that and do something amazing with it, then we will just regret it. So there was this itch that we hadn't built a real product that people just cannot live without. So the iconic product to me has two definitions of it, which is, one is that it is a product that comes to the market and changes the perception of what's possible. It opens up imaginations, right? So that's one. But the second part is that it is something you can't live without, that it's so insanely useful that you can't fathom your life without it, right? We can't fathom our life without iPhone or a car, maybe even electric car eventually, or even ChatGPT at the moment now. So can we build that sort of product? And on one end of the spectrum, we have all this cool product, but to me, even a microwave in our kitchen is an iconic product, because if it broke, you're going to be in a Walmart the next day trying to replace it.
You're going to be in Walmart the same night.
And it's not necessarily the sexiest thing. Like you're not going to think of it as a sexiest product, but that is the idea, that how do you build something? And if you have all this technology knowledge that you want to build a product that changes people's lives, and robotics and the product we are building was really critical, because ultimately the motivation came not because we wanted to just solve the problem that was there, but we realized that on average, families of 4 in the United States spends about 60 hours a week just doing these chores. Now, if you think about it, that's bigger than family of 4 may spend driving. Okay, so the amount of time that you just waste doing mundane and repetitive chores is like, if you take U.S. Census data of this survey data and extrapolate to the humanity, that's about 2.6 trillion hours.
It's the bane of my existence.
Exactly. And we are just felt like, look, we are built, and this was really obvious to me because I was sitting at home and I remember my wife's comments that I feel like I am cleaning all the time, or we're cleaning all the time, or she would say, and she would really get mad at kids saying that I just cleaned it and you already messed it up. So it's sort of this entropy is always there. And then this realization that we're actually creative species. We're not a repetitive species. No, we don't enjoy doing these things. And in the world where most of the technologies are actually built to take our time away, we can actually build a products that can give people their time back. And that was just so fulfilling, that here's a way where we can give their time back to people, and then person can become better pianists, better artists, better parents, better whoever they dream to be. So this was this idea that, look, let's build products that give people their time away, take the mundane and repetitive away, and if we can do that, that's amazing, because ultimately technology's purpose is to empower us, is to amplify us, and that's what we wanted to do.
Give us more of our time. This is one of the I think things that inspires me most about Matic, and which is we're all, the reason I found you was because I was looking, you already, there's this concept of the prepared mind, I think, like, you've been thinking about something, you're dreading this problem that you have in your life, and you're thinking, do humanoid robots solve this? And I'm a small angel investor in figure, right? And that was a big part of the reasons. I'm like, okay, hopefully this is the future I want to see.
That's correct.
Right? And then Matic came, we have the first robot cleaner here. I'm like, a smart cleaner? Oh, that would be interesting. Okay. And then I met you and I realized, okay, no, this is the master plan is different. Walk is more.
Yeah.
Is Matic going? One of the Matics going to be cooking for me in the future? Are they going to do my laundry in the future?
So I already sort of alluded to this point of view, right? That we spend so much time inside homes doing these mundane and repetitive chores, and that includes laundry and cooking and dishwashing and all kinds of stuff. And obviously, the future that all of us dreamed of was some version of Rosie the robot from Jetson, right? Some version of Alfred or a butler that just takes care of it.
I thought the Jetsons would already, like, that future we would be living by now.
Exactly. And at that time, the line was that, hey, we all wanted Rosie the robot. Instead, we got dumb Roombas. And you know, they were amazing for the 2002, but for 2020, they're quite dumb. So how do we change that future? And we just thought that one of few things we realized in 2017. One was that we felt like entire space of indoor robotics almost always starts with sensors or hardware, and then you work backwards. But what was really blocking it was the algorithm and AI. And specifically, our insight, and this is something we genuinely believe, is that indoor world is entirely built by humans, for humans, to and optimized for our own perception system, which is purely vision-based system. And we have 2 RGB cameras and bunch of algorithms. So if we say that nature has figured out a way to make us as perceptive just primarily using vision, can we make robots similarly perceptive? And if robots are going to do things on our behalf, and this question that came to us is, how do we build level 5 indoor robotics? Which is, if level 5 cars means that cars drive like humans, then level 5 indoor robots must be that they behave like humans in an indoor space. They do tasks like humans in indoor space. So if that's the thing, well, they need a similar perception system as us, because indoor world is built for us. So computer vision was the big piece of the puzzle. We felt like that was our strength that we could apply here. The second thing we realized is that, if you're building self-driving car, it's an incredibly hard problem from safety to other perspective. But still, car has a GPS to know where it's located onto the road, and that technology exists. And 2, it will have a version of a Google map to at least tell it where the road is going. Now, if it didn't have, no matter how smart the car was, it would be lost. Even if we are behind the wheels and if we don't know where we are located or where the road is going, we're also lost. But then in indoor spaces, we don't have Google Maps. We don't have GPS. So how does a robot know whether it's on the right side of the couch or the left side of the couch? How does a robot know that it's right next to the microwave or right next to the refrigerator to perform that task? And that entire thing was completely missing. So if you take a look at a lot of robotic devices or any robots out there, they usually build 2-dimensional floor plan-like maps. Now, floor plan doesn't tell me where exactly space which I'm looking at. So we just felt like computer vision was a primary way to go. And then we had this sort of a thought process I alluded to you that how do we go and solve this problem and build level 5 robots in a way that is not only profitable but feasible? Now, take one part of it, and then this second part was always that we wanted to productize it. So our thesis has all across the board since like.com has been that you have to productize the technology to know whether it's ready. And that forces you to do things. So what is the first product that we can ship that gets us there? And that was floor cleaning seemed like a really great space to go tackle this thing, but also because we felt like it was easier to go and solve for Rosie the robot and grow that robot the way human child grows, which is in the first 5 years of human child's life, they crawl, they understand the perception, and they really just learn to locomote, so navigate and locomotion, right? Move from one space to another. So Matic Floor Cleaner is the product we are using to solve that problem of perception and locomotion, which is, can we teach a robot to go from point A to point B in any indoor environment, regardless of the obstacles, regardless of the lighting changes, and regardless of changes in the environment, from precisely 10 out of 10 times. And that my 5-year-old still wouldn't do 10 out of 10 times precisely, right? So if we can teach that itself is a huge value proposition. So that was one. But then once we nail that, maybe we can think about how to build a second product that is still like a 5 to 10 year old, which is it's not capable of doing everything yet, but maybe it knows how to move things around and how to tidy up and how to do basic tasks in a simple manner. And even with a human child, we don't give them a knife as soon as they are 5 or learn to hold things, or scissors. What we do is we give them initially plastic cups and soft toys and Legos and toys, and then tasks are very simple, that just take your backpack and move it away, or just take your a jacket which is unbreakable, move it away. So maybe that's a second product where we can build and teach it precisely. And as the technology improves, as the hardware gets better, as it gets more affordable, we can get to third version. And for us, affordability was the key, which is how do we ship robots? Because if you're trying to save time, you need to democratize it. So how do we build something that is affordable today, not 5 or 10 years from now? So that's where just floor cleaning felt like a perfect beachhead, perfect first place. Because by definition, if you're cleaning floors, then a robot has to explore an entire home and build a map. It has to clean floors multiple times a day. So as it's going through that area, it can observe the changes in the environment and changes in the environment and dynamically update the map. And so just in the context of floor cleaning robot, we'd have to solve multiple hard problems. And then the third one was do everything on the device. Because we as humans don't have hive mind. And we very quickly early on realized that you don't want to build a robot inside home that says, oops, I fell down the stairs because Wi-Fi was weak, or oops, I ran into your pet or a child because Wi-Fi connection is no longer there or electricity is out. So we realized, and indoor world is far more dynamic. So we have to maintain privacy, which is not send all this vision data to the cloud, which is super important from family point of view, home point of view. Second one is low latency. And third one was dynamism of learning continuously on its own. So all these three things we could just do by solving problem on the device. And we felt like all the building blocks were available, and we could do it with this first product, get it out there, learn from it, which would allow us to do second, third, fourth product a little bit better. And our, I don't know how it will play out. We have a different thesis, but we tend to, like, one, history doesn't repeat itself, it does rhyme. So one place which is a really good example is this company called General Magic. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've heard of it. Early 90s?
Early 90s. It was actually Tony Fadell's first job.
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, he started
way ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its time. It was all ex Apple Macintosh team, and they tried to build iPhone. And turns out iPhone wasn't, world or consumers weren't ready for it. Infrastructure wasn't there. And what we instead got from consumer adoption point of view is first we got the cell phones, and then we got the PDAs, and then we got the Blackberries, and then we got the iPods. And once we realized that, okay, there are all these devices that could help us, and I don't want to carry 4 devices, then we sort of came up with the iPhone and smartphone and put it all together. So then the question is, how does consumer world play out? I think in enterprise world, you can go to multitask really faster, but in a consumer world, is it, are the consumers ready for multi-purpose robot, or is it really just a single-purpose robot that earns their trust, that they learn to use, it's affordable?
I remember we talked about this previously. Trust is a huge part.
Exactly. So trust is a huge part. And right now, like Roomba was a great product for 2002, as I earlier mentioned, but it did create this, and since then, they've only incrementally improved. So consumers are sort of, which is we've gone from default trust to default skepticism, that they've been over-promised and under-delivered so many times that there is this point of view that, is this really worth my money? And then I think we have to earn that trust using great product and doing it. So we just thought that if we can solve a problem in a meaningful way and go to the nth level in this one place, then we have earned right to innovate again and again and again.
So this is one of the best examples of a master plan to solve a problem, right?
Thank you.
I think this is like such a good example for any aspiring builders that are listening. And I hope they have takeaways from this on how to execute on a 20-30 year vision.
Sure.
Is there a written version of this on the website that's publicly available or anywhere?
We will make it available. So we started in 2017. I think I'll go in a slightly tangent here, but there are 2 ways to, when you start a company, you can do it a couple of ways. One is you can publish your master plan on day one, and say, here's what we're going to do.
Or it builds out over time.
And it builds out over time. But you can be
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
public about it, and certain companies have done this.
Mm-hmm.
We came from a school where we always were believed that it's easier to under-promise and over-deliver.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really talk about it initially. I think good example is sort of some of the other companies recently that have built a lot of hype. And we were taught by Tony Fadell that if you have a lot of hype, it's almost always hard to exceed the expectations.
Right.
So that's where the secretive part of Apple and
see.
Tony Fadell comes in, that don't talk about it, it's easier to surprise,
Yeah.
exceed the expectations.
Yeah.
So we didn't really publish it in 2017, 2018. If you joined a company, we told you about it on day one. Internally, it was
you
a
told your
return.
investors about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Now we are definitely at a point where we're going to start talking about it. So in the next iteration of the website, and as we kind of make, we do go through sort of launch 3.0 with Matic,
Yeah.
we will start talking about it. But in hindsight, I would do things differently. If you ask me what would you do differently, I
Interesting.
didn't think about it. I think there are two
Why is that?
spectrums. So there is this one spectrum of building the hype and saying that we're going to do this amazing thing.
Yeah.
And then there is a spectrum of not talking about it at all. But I think there is a middle one, which is build in public.
Yeah.
And building in public only works if you are authentic and you talk about your failures as well as your success.
Yes.
If you only talk about your successes, then it may not work.
Yeah.
But if you are willing to share your stumbles or how you're going to
Yeah.
go wrong, then a lot of people are willing to give you a lot of time and chance, and then you can form community. So I wouldn't start talking about it maybe in 2017, but in 2021 when we raised our last round,
Yeah.
we had an amazing demo, and a lot of people asked us whether we can share this video, and we chose not to.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I would probably go and start talking about it at that time in a very, very honest manner that this
Yeah.
is still a long way away.
I think that is another. I was going to ask like what you've learned about becoming because you were technical, but in this relationship, co-founder relationship, you took on the business hat.
Correct.
You wear the product hat, right? Which means you also fundraise, and sell. So in that, what have you learned about storytelling, and how you?
I think storytelling is so critical. It's the most important thing. So there are three things I always talk about as an entrepreneur you have to have. One is you have to be able to sell.
Yeah.
Right. Second thing is you have to be able to execute.
Yeah.
And third thing is you have to be able to hire right set of people, which is convince your team. And part of the selling is part of that, because initially if you get an idea, you got to sell your
Can
co-founder.
you share a story or an example of storytelling, and how maybe one example of where it didn't work out and you learned a lot from it, and another example of where you thought you aced it, where you...
So storytelling, I mean, I think Flutter time we were really building this pie in the sky idea, and the entire storytelling was built around this point of view that we were building eye of the machine, and gestures were just first part of it, and that worked out. So that was really pie in the sky. The second time around when we went with Matic, we were really grounded. So initially we were like, oh, we're just going to build this product, and then this will be step 2 and this will be step 3. And we were telling the story that way, and we had decent success, but eventually the realization was that you can't tell someone. So let's say if you're building Eiffel Tower, you can't tell someone that, like, look at this amazing piece of
look at the lobby.
Yeah, look at the lobby, or this amazing piece of one of the foundation piece that I've built,
Yeah.
and if I keep building on top of it, eventually we'll become Eiffel Tower. That doesn't work.
You have to show them the observatory.
Exactly. You have to show the final vision that this is what I want to build, and here's the first piece of the puzzle, and then this is the second, and then third.
Yeah.
So I think that top-down storytelling works really well, but this is ironic and hard, because when you're executing, you still have to focus on next 3 months and next year, and that small piece of the puzzle. So you get really deep into it, and then when you're telling a story,
Don't
you
get
have to
sold
come
on your
out.
own stories.
Yeah, and then you have to, which is you're just at the one time you're literally executing. So you're inside the forest and you're executing on that next step, and then you have to zoom out and see the forest at 60,000 foot level and explain it again. So those are the combinations. So I think
Context switching.
So in 2019, when we were raising our initial round, angel round, I think we were really pitching from floor cleaning point of view initially, and then talking about second and third, and halfway through through the thing, it dawned on us that we're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
And we flipped it and we started talking about the long-term vision of solving Rosie the robot and how this is the first step of that, and went top down. And that actually, so instead of bottoms up, top down, and that resonated a lot more, and we had far more success.
I love that story. So top down selling works way better. Show the
show the long
observatory of the
you have to show
Empire State
That's
and
correct.
how gorgeous it would be.
That's correct,
Versus
yeah.
the lobby.
That's correct. Yes.
That's a good one. You're in one of the hardest business models, which is consumer, selling directly to consumer. What's an insight you've had there when it comes to marketing, when it comes to consumer behavior?
So marketing wise, honestly, as we launched with Matic, so we did tons of launches at Nest. Between Nest and now, everything has changed. Which is how people, as I said, Nest was a time, like I remember there was a period between 2012 to 2000, maybe 18 or 19, where any hardware product you launched just almost always got great reviews. There was never a bad review. And that was because there was just such an optimism around anything hardware oriented. Now we are in a world where if you do not really build a good product, then you will, likes of MKBHD will give you a bad review. And I think that's fair. I don't think that's anything wrong with it. I just think that that's the way consumers have gotten as well. And that's not because one YouTube reviewer decided to give bad reviews. It's just that people sort of drank the Kool-Aid during that time, got a bunch of these products. Those products didn't exceed the expectation.
Trust works differently now, and how people buy is probably different.
That's correct.
More it's like community-led, as you mentioned, right? I think you didn't say exactly that, but you, I think, mentioned that we could have created a community around it sooner than this.
Yes, community around it, community-led, being authentic about it, telling about what works very sincerely, what doesn't work very sincerely, the troubles you're going through. I think a lot of people empathize with you doing hard stuff as long as you're willing to share failures along the way as well. And that sort of, so you have to be vulnerable, and that's really hard for entrepreneurs, because in some ways you're meant to be completely delusional and confident, but then in this other ways of saying that no, you're also vulnerable along the way by sharing what works and what doesn't work, and that's a fine balance, but you can build amazing community and following around it.
So that seems to be a hard reset building in 2025.
Correct.
Versus, and no matter what you're building.
No matter what you're building, I think there is, and I think it changed also because the generation, my generation, obviously is much more skeptical about sharing on internet
or failures.
Versus 20-year-olds today, they've lived online on their life, so for them sharing everything online is not all that different there. So they
it's
sort of
for them.
Exactly. So where I have to learn how to be vulnerable, they've actually already mastered their art, and I think that's where the attention is, and that's why they're really good at going viral.
And that's where I guess making memes is a real job.
That's correct.
That's where
another skill an entrepreneur has to master.
Skill
maybe fourth thing.
Yeah, the fourth thing an entrepreneur.
Yes, become a meme master.
Starting culture wars, becoming mimetic. Right?
Yes.
It's very interesting.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk about role models a little bit, and you talked about apprenticeships, right?
Yes.
And are there role models from? I think more. I'll reframe the question. What was a early transformational experience or something? As you were talking about hiring, you mentioned that you look for if people have had to overcome something hard in their life, right?
Yep.
Is there, and I see where that comes from, because it gives people the permission to just do things.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And what was the earliest you can remember where you had that experience, where you were like, oh, I can just do whatever. And, oh yeah, like this was really hard and I could do it. And that changed the trajectory of how you thought about things.
I think joining the startup was definitely one of those where you can say, hey, all of a sudden you're at a startup, and surprisingly, without any background, I could do things. So that was definitely liberating. I think that startup,
that's the earliest
first startup. Okay. That startup failing was also really kind of interesting, because you learn at a very early part of my career, I learned that it's okay to fail. that I would bounce back, that I was able to get to Accenture or next job, that's not the end of the world.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah, worst case scenario is already there. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I got laid off, so what? So that was really interesting in there. But at some point, if you ask about role model and stuff, I think for whatever reason, I always gravitated towards Steve Jobs. And I think the reason is because between 95, when I graduated from high school, to 2005, Windows was insanely dominant, and all the computers I used were Windows until.
Did you get to know Steve Jobs?
I didn't. I don't do it, but it was really interesting because I was on this technology space, and Internet Explorer was the most dominant browser, and Windows, and you use Office and Word, and you had Windows, and it was really Microsoft's world, and everyone was along for the ride. And then in 2005, I bought my first Mac, and that Mac was years ahead of its time. Like, it was so much ahead of its time in terms of where Windows was back then. And it was just such a delightful experience, and product was just so phenomenal that was the first time I just realized what the craftsmanship is. And then you get iPod, and it was another level, and then iPhone and everything. And it wasn't just about the hardware. Like, Mac OS X in 2005 was maybe 5 years ahead of where Windows was. Then they built Safari, which was amazing at that point in time. Then they built Keynote, and I grew up using PowerPoint, and I think once Keynote came out, I've never used PowerPoint again.
They have invented categories over and over and over again. Podcasting as a term emerged from Apple.
That's correct.
Keynote as reference to a presentation
emerged
from Apple. It's incredible.
And there was such a software innovation. So there was insane amount of software innovation in that 2007, 2008 timeframe. Apps is that way. So they just showed world what a delightful, well-crafted product would look like. And I think that was something I gravitated towards more than anything else. For whatever reason, that always resonated with me.
What's...
sorry, Google also. I will also give Google really, like, Google from, I guess, 2000 to 2008 is insanely amazing company. Maybe OpenAI is doing it that way now, but it just, the sheer amount of innovation that came out from Gmail to Calendar to Chrome to first Google search, where it was just extremely simple, to Google Maps. All of those were just mind-boggling at that point in time. So those were like as I was doing my job at like.com or even Salesforce.com, what I was seeing on the other side is this company's really changing the game by coming up with these amazing products and taking on Microsoft by just building delightful experiences, and that really crafted.
Being at Google at sub 1,000 employees, or like sub 5,000, that was a completely different rocket ship. Right?
It was insanely talented. I still think Google is a very talented company, but it doesn't take as much risk as they did back from 2008 to 2008.
Which has many which is a debate on its own, which I guess we don't have to get into, or we could.
Sure.
So Steve Jobs is an example of someone you admired from afar, right?
Correct.
I'll reframe that. Did you have a mentor that you knew personally who contributed to just like spending time with someone? It could be, maybe it was your co-founder, right? Or someone who really accelerated how you thought about things, or rewired your brain in a way, just spending time with them, whether at Google, whether Tony or other people throughout your life. It could be high school.
I think I don't know if I've had that long-term mentors. There are always people who I worked with, so it was always just surrounding myself with talented people. So at Salesforce.com, it was still small enough where I got to interact with Mark Benioff and a few of the early Salesforce people who are still there and doing phenomenally well. So those guys were really amazing, and I learned from there. Then at like.com, the CEO of like.com, Munjal Shah, he's a serial entrepreneur. He taught us a lot of different things. Then at Flutter, we were the founders, so we didn't necessarily have someone to learn from. But Paul Graham taught us a lot of stuff at YC. Tony was an investor, so we would meet him once every few months, and he would teach us quite a bit of things. So I've had pockets of sort of this.
That's what I meant by this.
I think for me, so for what I realized at some point, if there is a single thread of some of the decisions, is that I almost always chose to work with people who are really doing amazing
Being
stuff.
very intentional about
Yeah.
who you surround yourself with.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I always chose to bet on people instead of ideas or things like
Betting
that.
on
So-
Mark Benioff in 2000 was one of a bet, right?
Yeah,
It's-
and it was very deliberate. I literally, the way I got a job was I sent him an email, cold email, in 2005, way before cold email was a thing.
Oh my God, I was going to ask what's been the
Yeah.
most transformational cold email you sent.
Cold email.
Oh my God,
yeah,
okay.
Cold email is where I did. Then at like.com,
Yeah.
I also sent a cold email to CEO. That didn't work this time. So then they wrote a blog post on how they bought like.com domain by finding a guy who owned it and leaving a bottle of wine on his porch. So I showed up at
That was a
like.com
brilliant
offices.
strategy.
Yeah, so I was like, that's great. I'm just going to copy it. So I showed up at like.com with a bottle of wine
Yeah.
and a note for the CEO. And then Manjali's like, okay, I don't know if I have a job, but you at least get dinner for me. So that's how I got to know him. And so a lot of it is just sort of hustling, finding a way to make it happen. And
I don't believe in luck. I think you have to. There is the concept of prepared mind versus doing everything in your power, and sometimes things don't work out because the timing is not right.
Correct.
But
the phrase I like, which is that it's never an accident, but always a luck. Which is there is a combination of a serendipity surrounding,
right. But
like the other way I've heard of say it is that if you keep trying, sometimes universe sort of
the universe conspires. One of my old
Yeah.
mentors used to use that term. The universe conspires if you keep knocking the door.
Exactly. So there is that element of prepared mind. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's ever an accident. You don't get lucky by
It isn't
accident.
a true accident.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you have to keep trying to get lucky, and once in a while you do.
So Mark Benioff, is that the only email you remember that I guess changed the trajectory of your career?
I think that was one. Everything I've so. At some point, I can't remember.
Everything you get is through picking up your phone, cold calling someone, and
So I heard this phrase from someone that sales begins when you hear a no.
100%.
Right, which is it. If you
got a response, you're in.
You're in, exactly. Yeah. So and even if you get a no answer, you should try one more time. Yeah. So I sort of adapted this thing that I'm never gonna accept an answer to no. So Salesforce.com, actually, I didn't immediately send an email to like.com. I saw this. I guess movies and books also inspired me. So I remember watching Wall Street, the movie with Charlie Sheen, where where one of the scenes is that he got in touch with Gordon Gekko by calling his office 40 times for 40 straight days. Oh my God. So I would wake up, and so Salesforce.com just fascinated me because it was one of the only hosted platform company which became SaaS that succeeded, right? The sort of OG of SaaS. So I just wanted to know why they succeeded and my startup failed. That I had worked at. So I thought they were doing phenomenal marketing, and I was really excited about just Mark Benioff. So I would send one email every day at jobs@salesforce.com. That didn't work. So at some point I got fed up and I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna guess a bunch of emails for Mark Benioff and send it. And I think that's when I learned this framework that if only price I pay is me getting embarrassed, I don't really care.
So no price.
No price. So I sent him an email. 2 hours later, he responded. 2 days later, I was on a flight for an interview. And then I repeated that, obviously, at like.com. But even with Flutter and YC, initially we got rejected, as I told you. So we were very ahead of the curve. This computer vision and machine learning wasn't a thing. And PG thought we were just a technology. So I literally sent an email to PG back then when he was reading it still that, hey PG, you're making a mistake. I think you should at least see our demo. And he's like, well, yeah, but you guys are technology looking for a problem. So I didn't think I had a really good argument against it.
Yeah.
But I figured that if Stripe was one of the companies that created this open house, maybe he knows John Collison, and I had no idea if they had any relationship. So I literally just threw in an email saying that, yeah, but it's a technology that John Collison thought was one of the best he's ever seen. So then PG responded saying that, oh, really? John thought it was really cool. Let me talk to him. So he apparently called up John Collison, who said, yes, this was really good technology, and that's how we got the interview, and we got in.
I guess that is probably one of the earliest times you learned how to name drop.
I don't know if I mean John I didn't even know, like, I don't know,
but that's how signaling works.
Signaling works,
such a critical part of communications,
more than
telling a story.
More than signaling, it was more like I'm sure PG somehow has.
It's-
If PG has funded John,
Oh, yeah,
he
100%.
trusts John.
It's a
So
trust. It's a trust
trusting.
thing. It's
So
a trust
can I
thing.
expand that
Signaling
trust
is a
level?
trust thing. Like,
Yeah.
can you bring up someone who they trust?
Yes.
Right, and
Yes.
and get them to
Yes.
talk about
Yes.
the product,
Yes.
which is an art form on its own.
Yes. Yes. So that's what
yeah.
happened.
I hope like everyone's taking notes from this, because
Yeah.
these are incredible lessons in how to deal with rejection, knock down doors,
Yes.
and how to I guess build trust
Yes.
signal within network. It was interesting. We talked about talent. We talked about your early rejections, or like experiences that gave you the permission to just go do things, which is very important. A hard problem that you had to solve, and I think this is very interesting, and it probably inspires a lot of young talent, where every opportunity you got, it wasn't just you were chasing them, right? Like that.
Correct. Correct.
Taking a wine bottle to your next employer's house is like,
Yes.
it's very creative. It's
And it's this idea that you can always, which is you can go look for a job, or you can create a job.
create a job,
Create an
Yes.
opportunity for
create
you.
an opportunity for
Yes,
yourself.
and that's absolutely doable.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about something.
100%.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your point about this was, I guess, obviously true 25 years ago, right? But even more true now, where you have to be authentic,
Correct.
right? And if you're authentic, and if you truly follow your interest, you can create opportunities for yourself in that
Correct.
realm,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
It won't probably land the way you imagined it, but you can manifest things into existence.
You can absolutely do that. You can imagine, and part of it is just trying,
Yeah.
right? Which is just go out and put yourself in the position to potentially open the doors. Because if you don't do anything, the answer is no anyway.
Yeah.
So if you do something and it doesn't work out, it's still no. You have nothing to lose. So the only thing is maybe you got embarrassed a little bit, but who gives a shit?
And the interesting thing there is that, as I coach like team members I bring on, or as I talk to younger students, there's so much advice on this publicly available,
Yes.
content on this publicly
Yes.
available.
Yes.
None of it matters. It's a lived experience.
It's which is someone has to teach you to initiate or take initiative.
Or care enough to like follow up,
Well, yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I
That's
don't
a good
know,
way.
or-
That's a good point.
Right? Because we could talk about this
Yes.
and know
Yes.
it to be true,
Yes.
right? And as like 10 people hear it,
Yes.
they'll go back and they'll be like, okay, that can happen, that's great, but we don't think that's true, right?
Either they think that's not true, or they're just still worried, right? There is a quote that I really like. That quote is that at 20 you're worried about what will they think,
Yes.
right?
Low
At 40, which is where I am, you stop caring about what will they think.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't really care. I'm happy with who I am.
Yeah.
At 60, you realize that they were never thinking about you to begin with.
Yes. If you have that realization at 20 or 25,
You're good to go.
you're good to go. You're
Yes,
in a
that's
completely
correct.
different place.
That's correct. Yeah, and it was really when and this is honest truth, when I wrote an email
Mm-hmm.
to Mark Benioff, I remember thinking that he will get that email. Maybe he'll think I'm an idiot. Fine. How does that change for me? He doesn't know me. He'll probably forget me if
Yeah.
I'm not memorable anyway. It doesn't change anything in my life. But if it somehow likes the email, that does change, make a difference. So I have everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So it's a trade I will take every single time.
I first had that realization. I went to college for electrical engineering back home.
Mhm.
I was really bad at it. And the first time I had that realization was when I got an F in the first semester.
Yes.
And I wasn't interested. I found anything else to do except like find myself doing in that semester.
Sure.
In the second semester, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was hiding in the college.
Mm.
I would find different places but not show up in class.
Sure.
And just be anywhere but amongst my peers or seniors, because there was this embarrassment.
Yes,
right?
that you failed, yeah.
What, like, you've made your way into the country's top college, but you're not, meant for it. Like,
Yes.
you can't compete. And
Yes.
even though I hadn't put in the effort to
Yes.
compete, but
Yes.
there was this embarrassment that,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm a failure, right?
Yes.
Oh my God, like,
Yes.
people will not look at me the same way,
Yes.
right? I know my parents were embarrassed of me,
Yes. Yes.
and everybody around you in the society is embarrassed of you, right?
Yes.
and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done, right?
Yes.
But there was this unlock 3 or 4 weeks in, and it took a while to like truly root it out of my system, right?
Right.
It took about like 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Because I never became a good
Yeah.
engineer, right? I did manage to graduate, but
Sure.
I learned that people weren't thinking about me.
Yeah.
Right? I
No one
realized
cares,
that
yeah.
those 2-3 weeks of hiding didn't do anything because yes, a few people asked if I, was
Yes.
okay or not, but
Yes.
most people didn't care.
Yes.
Nobody
exactly.
cared.
Yes.
Nobody
And
was
means
interested in
nothing,
my.
yes.
They were just interested in their grades, and
Yes. Yes.
and everything was in my head.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I guess failure worked out in a different way in that sense.
So I
Which
think
is-
a lot of people are just afraid of asking, and I think
Yeah.
that's a little bit of goes back to this idea that you just gotta have a little courage.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony of courage is that it's one of those things that you get after you do an act, not
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Initially, when you do it for the first time, it just
Yeah.
scares you,
Yeah.
and then eventually you realize that that's fine. So you
And most people give up after the first time.
That's correct. Yeah. If it doesn't work, they'll definitely give up. But you
Yeah.
just have to keep
This
trying.
this is a fundamental truth, I guess. Salespeople know the best.
Yes. It's about taking shots.
Yeah.
And
it's reps.
I think baseball hitters know that best as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Not every single one is gonna work out,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Or basketball players.
Or basketball players,
It
exactly.
was really interesting. Oh, speaking of fundamental truth, that's a good dinner table question usually, but I'll ask you. What's a fundamental truth that you believe in that's contrarian?
Ooh, I think I haven't thought about this a little bit, but I think the fundamental, at least in the context of startup, which I will tell you, is this idea. I genuinely believe that you should go and do a startup in a place where no one else is doing it. Okay, and I think this goes from learning. No one else is doing it, and what I mean by that is that allows you to gives you time to get it right. You're not in this rat race where you might not think about it. It allows you to think of the problem the right way, solve the problem the right way. That's one. And then but at the same time, I absolutely 100% believe that you should never, as an entrepreneur, care about competition. Competition is irrelevant. So that's really, which is, if you just build a great product, things will take care of itself. I think there is just care about customers, care about building something really meaningful from that and solving their problem, you'll be fine. And the reason I say that is because I think Paul Graham again had this tweet or something that out of all the startups that YC has funded, maybe one died because of competition. Most die because they built something no one wanted, or they just raised too much money and spent too much money. So ingestion, they can't digest. So a lot of our self-inflicted wounds.
And another thing one of my friends says, which is also self-inflicted, is founders lose optimism. And
correct.
Yeah.
That's also that's founders fight, founders lose optimism.
Yeah.
Those are all the things that plays a role in it.
Yeah.
But I like the analogy there is that if you're trying to, let's say, I always talk about that if you're trying to go in a Wimbledon and competing with Federer, well, we don't even have a product. So right now we haven't even won a local championship. So why worry about a big company or big incumbent that might eventually kill you or someone else? Like, you're still ahead of the curve early in the game. Everyone is early in the game. So just go win one competition first. Let's just build a product that works. Let's get 5 customers who will love it, then 50, then 500. And then when we get to that level where we are big enough for them to care, we'll worry about it. But in the end, even then, the most important thing is to just keep solving problems.
As you use that framework, how do you then think about smaller players, also venture funded in your space, who are trying similar things?
I think so. The best example of this is and I'll come from a product point of view. But at the moment, if you think about smartphones, we have Android and we have iPhone. If I ask anyone what are the unique features in either of those things, the answer is none. Both of them do exactly the same thing. But the experience of Android is vastly different than experience of iPhone. So over the years, what I've learned is that competition and a competitive product can copy your features, but they can't really copy the entire experience. That is part of the genes and the company you've built.
Yeah.
So no matter what anyone tries, they can't build the product the Apple ways.
Yeah.
And because Apple genes are just very different than everyone else's. So in the same way, if you build a great product experience, small competitor or big competitor doesn't matter in a long term. But the second part is you still have to continuously innovate.
Right.
The game is catch me if you can, so to speak, which is you can't stay stagnant. If you stop innovating, even if you have a phenomenal experience, you might still get overtaken. And I think Apple did a great job with iPhone, where every year they come out and sort of disrupt their own phone of the previous year before anyone else does it. So there is an element of continuous innovation that you absolutely have to do. You can't stay stagnant. But then one other part that we learned at Nest was also that now Nest thermostat is 14 years old. If you're trying to buy a decent thermostat that looks nice in your home, Nest thermostat is still it. There's literally nothing else. And there are 130 million households. Everyone needs to buy a thermostat. Everyone is aware of how dumb thermostats are not good, so you don't even have to convince people. It's required by law, so market is there. So then the microeconomic principle says that wherever there is a profit in a market, competition will come until there is a perfect competition, there is no profit. Well, thermostat is where no one is coming, not a single new startup. There is nothing happening. Same thing with the Nest smoke alarm, nothing happening. And then Nest cameras, where I worked at, I joined in summer of 2015 when it was really just Nest Cam. I transitioned over to Nest when it was just Nest Cam. And by the time December rolled around, there were 20 different security camera products in the market, and joke was cameras flying out of Santa's ears. So I remember thinking really hard about saying that, wait, why isn't anyone coming in thermostat space or smoke alarm space, and why is everyone coming to this security camera space? And realization was also that the only thing I can come up with is, again, goes back to this idea of a barriers to entry. That turns out hardest part about thermostat, and everything is hard from hardware to software to UI, but the hardest part is making compatible with last 60 years of HVAC system. And that is so tedious that no one wants to go deal with it. With smoke alarm, we had 800 pages of regulations. Every state has a different regulation, so you have to do it. So there is an element of picking a field which may have some version of like if no one is going in that field, there is a good chance there is some version of a barriers to entry or SLAP or TDM or hard problem or however you want to call it. There is something that is preventing people from going in, which means your chance of success.
That is the opportunity.
That is the opportunity
because it's hard to do.
Because it's hard to do, and if you're building a company for the long term, then you're generating profit, which means you are probably have some sort of a dominant product, and that means that you want to be in a space where your probability of success is higher. And when you go into a space where no one is paying attention, then that by itself increases. Which is, we knew for sure when we started out that no one is going to come in home robotics and try to build floor cleaning robots. Not Google, not Amazon, not Apple. It just seems too unsexy. And there is a market here, and it will allow us to create a product that is cash flow positive. If we can genuinely build a better product, there is an opportunity. And then we can go to second, third, which is much cooler item. But at least in this one, however long it takes, no one is coming. We just have to do something better than the disc robots.
I think I really agree with that framing, that if you choose to solve the hardest problem, that becomes a moat in itself.
Or barrier to entry.
Or like barrier to entry, that is the barrier to entry, right?
Correct.
And that compounds over time.
Correct.
So that's why it's like harder for new entrants to come in.
Correct. Yes.
Which in this case was probably, in the Nest case, was a lot of manual labor.
A lot of manual labor. In this case, if anyone wants to start home robotics, we're like, bring it on, be our guest. We know how hard it is. Maybe you guys are geniuses and won't make it will figure it out faster than us, and I'm sure that's possible. But we know it's hard, and eventually you just have to ship, and shipping is much harder. It's ironic because if you take a step back and think about it, we might be the 4th consumer robotics company to ever ship at this scale, right? Because first one was iRobot, then Nito, I guess, which was the second one. Then Anki, which was also Nito guys that shipped 100 million robots. And then we haven't seen any other consumer robot out there. Like there have been some Kickstarter campaigns and some few and there things.
Count, yeah.
Yeah, but nothing.
Would DJI count? Drones?
Drones, you can think of it. So Skydio and drones, I'm not including them.
Okay.
But yeah, I was just thinking more from robots perspective.
Home robotics, okay.
Home robotics or robots, consumer robots perspective. But yeah, drones and Skydio is a good example of
Skydio,
someone that has shipped. But it's not that many.
Yeah. No. You're right. You're right. That's an interesting framing. I'm sure listeners are going to have, especially aspiring builders, are going to have good takeaway from that. I would have like probably poked you more on the contrarian takes if we were at an actual dinner table, but
sure.
I'm going to do like a closing round of questions. So, what's a book you've read recently that you would recommend?
Oh, I love books. I think you mentioned what inspires me. Books have been great. The last one I read was really the Jensen book, The NVIDIA Way, which is really interesting and has some takes. But if you ask me transformational books, I still think You and Your Research, I think, I forgot the name of that book, that essay. It's really great. And if you're doing anything hardware, please go read Tony Fadell's Build book.
I've read it. Amazing book.
Yes.
Even for people who are in their careers.
Correct.
Incredible career. Incredible book to think about careers.
Yes. And then the book I was thinking is The Art and Science of Doing Engineering by that one is one of the Stripe Press book, which is really
The Art and Science of Doing Engineering.
Correct.
Stripe Press is doing some really good books these days.
So that one is a really good one as well. How to think about product. There are, I love reading biographies. So I read both of Elon's biographies, which are fascinating. Liftoff, I haven't read the second part, but the first 6 years of SpaceX, which is the same author has created a second book on SpaceX. But Liftoff is the first one, which is amazing as well. So there are a lot of really good books like that.
Ashley Vance wrote both books, right? Ashley Vance?
Ashley Vance wrote the first Elon book.
Yeah.
I haven't read his second book yet, but yeah. And then of all the Steve Jobs biography, one of the one that I like is, I think, it's like Inside Steve Jobs' Mind, or I forgot.
I'm guessing it's not Walter Isaacson.
It's not Walter Isaacson. There was another one that came out which was really good, because that's the only one that went deep into his wilderness years. And what I mean by wilderness is post first Apple, like between first and second Apple stint, when he was at Next and when he was at
that era
doing Pixar, and it was amazing because that captured every single thing he learned during this time, because Next wasn't necessarily a successful company, and Pixar had its own sets of failures, and there's a lot he learned along the way that sort of compounded for the second rise of the Apple.
That was the foundation of the Apple we know today.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
What's a movie or show you watched recently? Favorite movie of all time. I guess we can do that.
I can't do one. If you ask me, what are the inspirational movies?
You got inspiration for Matic from a movie. So actually, sci-fi is so important.
Sci-fi is so important, but I like all kinds of movie. I guess Martian is still one of my favorite book and favorite movie. The Martian, right? I mentioned Project Hail Mary, which is phenomenal.
Project Hail Mary is phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Yeah. I just rewatched Interstellar. That was amazing. So, and I'm one of the few who probably loves Tenet as well, from Christopher Nolan. I thought that was a great movie, and partly any movie that evokes sort of a thought process is another one. And then the last one that I truly loved, which was really surprising, was because I didn't expect it to going in, was Whiplash.
Whiplash was actually phenomenal.
Yeah, so Whiplash is one of my favorite movies because there is this element of no pressure, no diamonds. And we live in a world, it's ironic to me because all these people who do day-to-day jobs or professional environment work, they go to sports teams and they yell at sports players and they use all kinds of names or kind of react emotionally to sports player winning or losing. And if sports players are getting yelled at by their coach, it's kind of okay. But if the same thing happens to them on their work environment, where a coach or manager is trying to push them, it's not okay. And that part is really kind of interesting, how world is sort of kind of moving this to direction that yeah. So I'm definitely very old school in that sense, that I like places which are pressure packed, and I don't really mind someone telling me how I can improve or how I can do things, and I wish more of that was there in the real world.
I think a decade or so probably earlier, but I still prefer that.
Yeah.
It's probably a function of our brought-ups.
Person of products, exactly. So I have pretty thick skin. I can take it. I much rather someone tell me how bad I am at something and improve than kind of get at this.
Then sugarcoat it.
Correct. Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. I definitely don't
that.
like everyone gets a trophy mentality. That doesn't work with me.
I agree, and hopefully we're promoting more of that, through this conversation.
Correct.
What's and this is like, I think hopefully this reminds you of something that probably you haven't thought about in a long time. What's an instance where somebody paid it forward to you or did something for you that you're still incredibly grateful for? And
that one I've thought about it quite a bit, actually. That one, so I used to, when I moved to undergrad at University of Maryland, I used to live in this studio apartment, and I didn't have any money, and I used to work at Pizza Hut delivering pizza and earning after college and earning things. And at some point, one of the managers, or was assistant managers, I believe her name was Kim found out that I don't have any furniture, and she and her boyfriend were going to do it, so she just gave me her entire home furniture.
Oh my God.
And from bed to couch to everything, and that was the first time I had any furniture in my home. So that was one of the kindest things someone has ever done for me. And then and then I was lucky enough to have a distant uncle also who gave me a car.
Yeah.
So my car broke down, and he just gave me his old car and said, use this. So along the way, there were a lot of people. When I was 18 and 19, there were a lot of generous people like this who helped me out when I had no money whatsoever.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
We stand on the shoulders of giants.
Correct. So of extremely generous people, yes.
What about America inspires you, this place, and what's something you're optimistic about?
I think I'm really optimistic about the future of America. I still believe that America is the place where you have freedom to think, freedom to dream, freedom to build.
Yeah.
I came here, as I mentioned, with nothing, and I went through the system of America, and it has allowed me to really chase dreams and build stuff that I never thought I would be able to do when I was in high school or college here. So I just love the system, which is very sort of opportunist driven. That if
meritocracy is rewarded.
Meritocracy is rewarded. Capitalism, that it's really about your willingness to work hard and dream and take risk, and if you do that, there is an opportunity. I think that is the America for 250 years, that if you're willing to come from whether it's Europe or anywhere else and dream, and if you were adventurous enough and wanted to explore West or do something crazy, there was always a freedom and liberty to make it happen. And I think that's still the America that is there, and I would love to preserve that.
So through We the Builders, it's actually inspired by the preamble of the Constitution, We the People.
Yes.
To celebrate builders such as yourself, who are shaping the next 100 years through science and technology.
Yeah, and that's brilliant.
Well, one of my, I guess, parting questions would be, if you could work on anything other than Matic, or a technology you would like to see come into existence in the next 25 years, what would it be?
I think it will still boil down to some version of Matic or robots. I feel like there is a lot of what is the right way of putting it? Which is 100. I heard this phrase or anecdote from someone, it blew my mind, but if you just dial back 100 years, then on average people had traveled 30 miles from their home. Right, which is cars were still new, trains were still there, and planes weren't there. So this idea that you only travel 30 miles for your home on average just blows my mind. I'm sure now it's maybe like 3,000 whatever, or at least a few hundred at least, right? Much larger. So technology really shrunk the time it takes from going to point A to B, but also create a distance larger. And that means my parents are in India. A lot of people live that way, that we don't necessarily live in the same place where our families grow up in. And I do feel super guilty sometimes, or bad about not being there to help my parents. Or be able to take care of them. And they want to live in India. Their life is in India, and it's amazing. And luckily, they have enough health to be there. But there is an element of, at some point, saying that, okay, they took care of me. Now it's my time to do it. And I think as we move forward, that is going to only skyrocket as the moving becomes such a huge part of it. So for that generation, how do you create that generation? Still doesn't have full benefits of technology in terms of just taking care of their day-to-day stuff. So, because even when they get help, they get taken advantage of, or they might be may not have a cognitive power to actually understand what's going on. So can you build something trustworthy, or can you take technology to solve that problem in a
robot
way?
for elderly care?
Yeah, so that would be amazing if there is a robot or amazing Alfred that can take care of your parents.
I will push you on that, because that does seem like a possibility in the evolution of Matic.
Correct.
So, other than robotics, what is something?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it, honestly.
If you could give someone, let's say, your friends, your son's friends come up to you, right? And they want to build something for the next 20 years or 25 years, right? This is something that you maybe care deeply about, but you're all in on, obviously, Matic.
Yeah.
What are some thoughts you would share with them?
I think there are a lot of places where things are not right. One of the places in United States and worldwide is definitely healthcare. So it's a little bit tangential to elderly care, but healthcare is one place where I feel like rent seeking is still pretty prevalent. There are too many middlemen, and you really do not get a good advice.
My ultimate vision for that is the complete elimination of the existence of hospitals and doctors.
Yeah, so I mean,
I don't know where you fall on that curve.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I haven't thought about enough to give you an answer. It's just that from insurance system we have to the bureaucracy we have which is the way I think about it is maybe there are doctors who just want to do good. How do you enable them, and how do you surface those ones versus ones who are just in it for the money?
They're prisoners of the system.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes, exactly. So how do you break those barriers for them where they can do it? So it's a combination of saying that, hey, how do you give a good advice? How do you give sort of unbiased advice? But how do you enable experts who are genuinely experts and who genuinely can see the things in a way? And there are a lot of doctors out there who want to do good. So that might be one place.
Well, I hope we meet a founder who starts a healthcare company because of this and tells us that, right?
Yes, that would be amazing.
It has been an incredible pleasure.
Likewise.
Time always flies when we catch up.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being so generous.
And likewise, thank you for coming over, setting this up. And
this has been an incredible conversation.
Likewise. Thank you.